Are you a dungeon master? Do you want to be a dungeon master? Do you have blue face paint on your face? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you're just like me. Not only do you enjoy smashing players in the face with your axe every time they metagame, but you're also a busy person, and while prepping for a D&D game, well, sometimes that's hard. And as much as you'd like to force one of your players to run D&D for a change, well, they all suck, so it's pretty much up to you to be the forever dungeon master. And that's exactly why I get out my crayons every month and write a new issue of Lair magazine. Well, I mean, it's not just me, I have a team of people too. We all get out our crayons and write it, yeah. Anyway, every issue of Lair magazine contains 5th edition Dungeon Master resources to help you reduce your prep time while still running amazing games for your lazy, good-for-nothing players. Every issue of Lair magazine contains 2 to 3 adventures complete with maps for online play. You know, we also sprinkle in other stuff like puzzles and traps, which, let's be honest, both suck to have to make yourself. So, I mean, wouldn't you rather just become a DM Lair patron and pay me to write them for you? I mean, you know, my team and I, with our crayons? Now, if you love your wonderful players as much as I do, consider helping me to meet my sales quota by becoming a DM Lair patron today at the link below. You'll get a new issue of Lair magazine every month and other cool stuff like map packs and bonus adventures. Okay, that's it. Please become a DM Lair patron now or I will find you.
All right, what's going on? Hello. So tonight we are going to be looking at the new Unearthed Arcana, the Cleric and Revised Species. Yeah, tonight's going to be a walkthrough. We're going to spend probably the first part of the stream literally walking through this Unearthed Arcana that came out yesterday sometime. They released it like last night, like super late or something. It was really weird. Anyway, we're going to spend the first probably hour, 2 hours. I don't know how long it's going to take us. We're going to walk through the entire Unearthed Arcana. I'm going to read lots of it. I've already read through it all and I've made notes and I have some thoughts about some of the things, but I'm still going to read a lot of it. But we're going to skip some of the parts probably. The second part of this stream, perhaps the last hour or so, we'll kind of see how things go as far as pacing and getting through the Unearthed Arcana. But the last part of the stream is going to be me answering your questions. So what you can do is as we're going through this Unearthed Arcana, you can literally be dropping your questions in the chat and then my moderators will pull your questions, they'll put them in the spreadsheet, and then when we get to the Q&A part, I'll just start going through all the questions you guys had about the Unearthed Arcana. Now, the questions might be like, what do you think about this, blah, 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 etc. That's fine, whatever you guys want to ask, it doesn't matter to me. But the first part of the stream, literally just walking through it, and then we're going to answer questions. So that's pretty much what we're doing tonight. I already have a cat down here. He's bothering me. He wants attention. Sorry. So yeah, that's what we're doing for this stream. Now, before we get to the meat of it and start walking through this, I just want to take a few moments here to give some shout outs to my awesome patrons. They help support all the content we create around here. I'm super, super grateful for them. So the names you see on the stream right now, like I said, these guys help support what we do. These live streams that we do, the free videos that we put out there. We have tons of free resources over on the dmlair.com. They also help contribute to that as far as like, because we pay professional writers to like write this stuff and put it out there. You know, and so we have to, you know, pay the bills and stuff. These guys help make sure we can do that. They also contribute toward Lair magazine as well, which is our premium publication and all that kind of good stuff. So very, very appreciative to all of our wonderful patrons here. And then these guys right here, they pay me, whoa, where's my thingy? They pay me even more money to say their names out loud every stream. It's like a bribe. They also get other benefits too. But anyway, let's just give them a quick shout out here, and then we're going to jump into this Unearthed Arcana. 5e Magic Shop, Aaron J, Alex, Alex S, Amanda W, Ambers, Andrew S, Andrew U, Angelique K, Antoine B, Art Soccer, Arutha, Ashley, Baldwin J, Ben B, Benjamin P, Berncastle, Bradley H, Ben, Brandon A, Carl C, Sedef, Chris C, Christian V, Christopher G, Christopher J, Clay W, Cody B, Coinslack, Contrary Gravy, Daniel S, Dap, Daz Was Up, David S, Derek E, Doug, Duty K, Dungeon of Terra, Dutch, Ed R, Edward L, Emfrabo, Endorian, Eric B, Aerono T, Fabian H, Flux, Forest Blue, Gabriel T, Gallust, Gene A, Jeff R, Goliath Cleric, Gravy Chorn, Gregory H, Harlan S, Heather L, Helton, Iron Cascade, Izzy T, Jace F, Jackie Pizza, got cats going crazy on me, Jake L, Jacob K, James L, Jan F, Jason G, Jessica J, Jim P, JM, Joan P, Joe E, John A, John H, John Pigsauce, Jonathan V, Joseph H, Josh S, R, and T, and W, another Joshua R, Joshua W, Justin N, K, Keith L, Keith W, Kevin K, F, T, W, Kirby, Curie Claw, Kyle M, Lionheart, Magna, Malton M, Mark K, Marty M, Matt B, Matthew J, Matthew C, Mike S, Mirastal, Mitchell, Mr. Oh my goodness, 20s, Mr. Owl, Mr. Lincolnu, Nerd with Glasses, Nessie, Nick W, Nomad, Old Mad Mage, OND, Penguin Butt, Porkchop Bacon, Psycho John, published author, Ramus Ramsey, Randy B, Rebar, Renner C, Robert J, Robin B, Ron R, Ryan, Rosale R, Sakura, Sam B, Scott V, Sean S, Shadow 1317, Shane L, Sheila A, Snowy Tiggy, Sonoma Sofa Man, Soul P, Soul Naya, Stephen G, Stephen T, Tokens Tyron, Terry V, the old DM, the new bad hombre, Thiago P, Thomas C, Thomas F, Tim B, Timothy T, Travel and Cash, Travels the Lost, Tyler H, Tyler R, Valagor, Vladimir S, Will M, William C, Worthlot, XX Redrum, Yoel R, Zachary J, Zombie Tommy. Whew. All right, sweet. Thank you, folks. Let's get over here. All right, I gotta get a drink after that long naming. That was pretty rough too. Usually I do a better job reading those names. Oh, baby. All right, let's go pop over to this Unearthed Arcana. Let's start wading through this bad boy. I'm gonna tell you, there were things I saw in it that I liked, and then there were other things that I will have some juicy comments for, I'm sure. I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. All right, let's see if my monitor goes to the right monitor. I didn't check this. Hey, it works! It works! Whee! All right, so here we have the wonderful Unearthed Arcana that they gave us. So just for like context here too, this is, I watched the video too. They put out a video as well today that talked about some different things as well. So I'm probably going to reference some of the stuff they said in the video that they put out. No, I think they put out the video yesterday. I don't know. Their release schedule is really weird. It was like, whatever. I'll probably reference some of the stuff that they had in their video where they had, what was it? Jeremy Crawford and that Todd guy were like talking. Well, I mean, you know, Jeremy was talking. The Todd guy was asking questions and stuff, whatever. So I'll reference that video a little bit because there were some things in there that I thought were interesting as well that probably play into a little bit of some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the Unearthed Arcana today. So let's hop over to this bad boy and get going though. All right, so hello, this is part of, yes, this is spectacular. So today they have in this sucker the Cleric class. We're going to talk about revised species. Now this is a change. They're no longer calling them races, they're calling them species. They finally wised up. I have been saying for over a year that they should stop calling them races and start calling them species. I literally have predicted this because they just get themselves in so much hot water over on Twitter and stuff by calling them races. They'd be better off with species. I think they finally realized that, and there you go. They're gonna call them species now. They had an official post on D&D Beyond, I think, or somewhere that explained all of their rationale, but let me boil it down to you, for you. The real reason they're going from races to species is they keep getting in hot water, and they want to stop getting in hot water, and it's very wise on their end, because honestly, what we find in the player handbook aren't actually races. They are species. They are literally species. So it's a better description of what the races are. And it honestly, it helps Wizards of the Coast stop getting in so much political hot water by giving them a different term. So they're very wise to move that way. And that's why they're moving that way. I don't remember exactly what their official explanation said, but the reason, that's the real reason right there. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about the Cleric class today. We're gonna talk about the revised species, and they also have this rules glossary, which is the very end, which has some very nice stuff in it too. There were some reversals. They made some changes, and then people didn't like them, and then they reversed them. And so we're gonna take a look at a couple of those things as well that I thought were very interesting. Some of them I like too. There is some stuff in here I like, and the other stuff is just, I don't know if I could say I'm indifferent to it, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see as we go through. This is playtest material. All right. Okay. Let me explain something. This is not a playtest. This is market research. This is market research. They want to get their customers' feedback on features so that they can prepare. Basically, I made notes. They have a whole thing here, okay, of what they're. I'm going to do a separate video on why this is not a playtest because this really annoys me. This isn't a playtest. They're doing market research. They basically want to make sure that the product that they create will sell well and that it'll be well received by people and that it will give people what they want. And so they're seeing what people want. That's what they're really doing. It's not a playtest. That is erroneous to assume that it's a playtest because it's not. So anyway, but they're calling it a playtest and they're calling everybody playtesters. And they go over that information once again at the beginning here. All right, power level. Okay, let's talk about this. Power level. The character options you read here might be more or less powerful than options in the 2014 Player's Handbook. If a design survives playtesting, we adjust its power to the desirable level before publication in a book. This means an option could be more or less powerful in its final form. All right, first, almost everything is more powerful than the 2014 Player's Handbook. Almost every single thing. And I want to add this too. In the video they put out yesterday, they were talking about how the feedback they received was like 80% positive. And then there was like some of the feedback they received on certain things were negative. One of the things Crawford brought up that they received negative feedback on was the Dragonborn. And let me tell you why they received negative feedback on the Dragonborn. We're going to delve into this a little bit more depth when we get to the Dragonborn in this issue of Unearthed Arcana. But the bottom line is that in the last Unearthed Arcana, or the original one, whichever one they changed it in, maybe it was the very first one they came out with, they basically nerfed the Dragonborn's breath weapon. They made it worse. And of course they got very negative feedback on it. So in this Unearthed Arcana, they not only made the Dragonborn's breath weapon way better than their original nerf, and kind of online with the way it originally was in the 2014 Player Handbook, but they also gave the Dragonborn a fly ability. So they're like, oh, you didn't like our nerf to the Dragonborn? Well, let's just change breath weapon back and give you fly! Whee! So they just did a 180 and then give it a little oomph as well. So basically, what they're doing is most of the stuff in here is far more powerful. Let's talk about why this stuff is more powerful, because I think this is very important. I think I might do another separate video just to talk about why the power level of everything is so much higher, because we are definitely seeing an increase in power across the board. Now, that's a neutral thing, and also possibly it's a positive thing, it's a neutral thing, and it's a negative thing. And let me explain a little bit why. So essentially, Wizards knows that power sells. I have heard they do the same thing in Magic the Gathering, where they keep on releasing more things and more things that are overpowered or more powered than previous options. And it encourages people to buy the new decks and build new decks and stuff like that because you get more power. That's what I've heard. I don't play Magic the Gathering, but I've seen people leaving comments on my videos saying that that's what they do in MTG. So they've learned, and MTG, by the way, is where they really make the money, hand over fist. Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like, woo, as far as like their revenue stream, as that's my understanding. So they've learned that power sells. And so that's what they're giving us. That's what they're giving us with one D&D. They're giving us more powerful options for almost everything because they know that it will usually ensure a positive reception. People generally are really interested in more powerful options. Generally. Some people don't want them. Dungeon masters might get frustrated with them and not know what to do with them and how to handle them and stuff. But generally speaking, players like more powerful options. And so they know power sells, and so they're building up things that have a lot of power in it because they want to sell these new books that are coming out. And they know, and the Dragonborn nerf that they've now reversed into like being way more powerful reinforces to them as they're doing this market feedback through this playtest that power sells. And if they nerf something, people don't like it. But if they make it more powerful, people like it. And so they're really, this is their market analysis before they make these next rule books for the 6th edition that they have coming out. So that's the first thing. So that is just kind of, they're going to make things more powerful because it's better for them to, for their business to sell books and stuff like that. Now, the other thing too is that once they make those new books, right, and the options in there are more powerful, it helps better guarantee that people are going to go buy them and use them, right, because they're better than 5th edition. They're more powerful than 5th edition. Now, the problem is that you start to get into the fact that if everything that's coming out in 1 D&D in 2 years, let's say, when it's actually the official new edition that comes out, if it's all more powerful and it's way better than 5th edition stuff, people are going to want to, many people, some people won't obviously, but a lot of people are going to be incentivized and tempted to go to 1 D&D 6th edition because the options there are more powerful and the players are going to want that. They're going to like that. And they're probably going to put some less pressure on their dungeon masters to run 1 D&D because they get more power and stuff like that. And so there's incentive to go to 1 D&D, you know, and Wizards is doing well. They're selling books and stuff. But as more people are using 1 D&D and players are wanting to use 1 D&D, what you're going to find, especially since we see the power level going up quite a bit with this new content, is you're going to find the current books are less and less usable. Like, they might actually end up being backwards compatible, so to speak, maybe technically by the letter of the law. But what you're going to find is, as everybody's using the new, more powerful options in 1 D&D, is that you're going to be very much less able to, well, first of all, run modules that were made in 5th edition. They're not going to age well. They're not going to be able to handle the new levels of power without extensive rework by the dungeon masters. Now, the other thing you're going to find too is even books like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything or Fizzbands that have new options in them. Like, those options aren't going to age very well. When you have the new 1 D&D options that are going to even improve on the power there and be even more powerful, those old options from Tasha's, from Fizzbands, from Dragonlance, from whatever books they put out between now and 2024, those books are going to pale in power comparison. And so people are going to be incentivized really to move to the new books. So I don't know, if I personally were planning on running 1 D&D and I wanted to transition to 1 D&D when it came out, I would stop buying books right now. I would definitely stop buying books because I don't think they're going to age well. I don't think you're going to get much use out of them once you transition to 1 D&D. That's if you plan on going to 1 D&D, right? So anyway, I'm probably going to talk more extensively about the whole power thing and stuff, and I think some of the reasons behind it and the consequences that are going to come of it. But we can definitely say that almost everything that we see is becoming more and more powerful, like across the board. There's some things where no, and then there's some things that got nerfed and now they're turning it back because people didn't like it. Because of course, when you nerf something, you're going to get negative feedback. Like, hello, come on, that's the way it's going to work. And people generally speaking like power. And so that is the direction we're seeing things move. And let's get into more specifics. I just wanted to take that like pause, zoom out to address this because they say in here that, you know, some things may be more or less powerful, but you really are seeing pretty much everything is more powerful as we go through here. All right, feedback. Yep, you can leave feedback on this stuff. Okay, and yes, that's spectacular. All right, then it starts to talk about the different parts of a class. Primary ability, this really just talks about the primary ability, which we all know. Like, if you're a cleric, your primary ability is wisdom. It talks about multi-classing rules. You have to have a score of at least 13 in the primary ability. We have class groups. This is not new. This is what came out in the last Unearthed Arcana, expert classes, where you have experts, mages, priests, and warriors. And then a whole bunch of people were complaining about the artificer. Like, I think that was one of the feedbacks that people were giving. They're like, what about the artificer? And so they literally have a little thing here that says they have next to experts, they have an asterisk that says the artificer is also an expert. Okay, so they couldn't just put it here. They had to put it in a little asterisk, but it doesn't come out in the player's handbook. And so I suppose that's the reason why they don't like put it up into the main grouping, because it's kind of like an add-on class or something. But I suspect artificer will be in the core player handbook that comes out in 2024. That'd be my suspicion. All right, class groups don't really have any rules, but they come into play at certain points and stuff. They do recommend that if you're forming a party of adventurers, that you should probably have a character from each of the class groups to be well-rounded. That's probably a pretty good recommendation. Creating a member of the class, and then to give some information. That section tells you how to determine your hit points with which proficiencies and armor training you gain from the class. The equipment the class provides at first level, and how to use the multi-classing rules of class. Okay, that's cool. Class features, we'll talk about those. We know what those are. Subclasses, we know what those are. Okay. A class's description is followed by a section dedicated to subclasses for that class. A subclass represents an area of specialization for a member of a class, and the subclass grants special features at certain levels. When playtesting the new version of a class, you can use a subclass from an older source, such as the Tasha's Color Everything or Player's Handbook. If the older subclass offers features at levels that are different from the subclasses in the class, follow the older subclass's level progression. This is exactly where this playtest is going to get super confusing. Okay, and they addressed some of this. They tried to address this problem in the video they put out too, because what you run into with this playtest is they're putting out piecemeal upgrades and changes and stuff, but there's also existing stuff from 5th edition that people are using. And so people are struggling with this idea of what do we use and what do we do and this kind of stuff, and how do they mesh together? How are they compatible? How do we make them fit? And if something isn't mentioned, or if it seems excluded, was it changed? You know, like for instance, the example they had was, there was an example from the Rogue's Uncanny, what was it there? There was some rogue feature that didn't mention something that the rogue was or wasn't able to do. And then people were confused about whether the rogue could still do it or not, right? But then there was another, and then they were like, well, yeah, he can't do it anymore. We're trying to take that out. But then I forget the specific one. Maybe somebody in chat knows. The use object? Okay, use object. Yeah, what was it? It was their uncanny, oh, it was their bonus action thing. What is the name of that bonus action thing? I should open my book up. I can't remember the exact name of it. I think it was maybe use magic device or something. A cunning action. All right, they took something out of cunning action, and people were confused about whether it was an accident, it was forgotten, or if it was intentional, and they said that it was intentional. But at the same time, Eldritch Blast was not put on the class spell lists, and people were like, was it left out? Was it intentional? What's the deal? And they were like, well, it was not left. It was left out. You will have Eldritch Blast, is what they were saying. And so I think there's going to be continued confusion about what was intentionally changed and what was unintentionally changed, or what may have been left out but will still be there. And you're going to continue having, and they, you know, what really annoyed me too is in their video they were like talking about that, and they were just kind of chuckling and laughing over it, like, oh, you know, la, ha, 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 ha. And I'm just like, no, you guys, you're asking people to playtest this, and it's confusing, and people are probably frustrated and wondering what's going on. It's not really funny. So I don't know, that kind of annoyed me a little bit, in all honesty. Now, the other thing you're going to have happen too, but by the way, to add the complexity of this quote-unquote playtest, is that you're going to have tons of these Unearthed Arcana coming out, tons of them. And so as you're quote-unquote playtesting, you're going to have to be using multiple PDF handouts to try to like figure out what's what. And then here's the other thing too. From one PDF to the next, things will supersede others. Like for instance, I have here the expert classes PDF here, and there were things in here that were changed in the PDF that came out today. And so you're going to constantly have to be seeing which things were changed and which things were updated and which things remained the same. You know, and there were things that were released in the PDF from yesterday that don't look to have been changed at all from the PDF that came out last time, but they were included anyway. And so I wasn't sure why. And so I just guessed, so I don't know. I think this is going to get very confusing the longer this goes on. And they're going to have to keep on fielding these questions from people. I think is what it comes down to. I'm not really talking about the PDF. I'm tangenting on a different topic, but all right. 3 class highlights. Here are highlights in this series classes. All classes have new features, as well as revised versions of old features. Oh, you better believe they have new features. The cleric that we're going to be talking about today has some new features. Woo! The cleric got a boost. Wow, this cleric is a powerhouse, you guys. Just wait until we get into it. When a class offers a decision, a suggested choice is usually presented, especially lower levels, making it quick for easier to generate. Yeah, so I like the idea that they're offering suggestions so that you can create character classes quickly. One of the most difficult things for new players, probably in my opinion, is creating characters. And so just giving them like, you know, suggested options or ideal options, I think that's a very good thing that they're doing. Each class's old 20th level feature has moved up to 18th level. Because power, right? Get power sooner. Opening up 20th level for epic boons. I mean, the other reason is that nobody ever plays level 20, usually. So why not try to push some stuff down a little lower where people might actually play it? Maybe. But how many groups ever get to 18? You know, high levels don't see play. High levels just don't see play. You know, this is an interesting thing too. This is an example of they asked players, you know, what levels they generally enjoy playing at. And most people said that they don't like playing at levels 1 and 2, and then by level 10 or so, they don't like playing anymore. And the problem with that sort of feedback is that the way they've set up the current edition of 5th edition basically makes it so that low-level play is perhaps unsatisfying because it's easy to die really quickly and you don't have a whole lot you can do. And then high-level play has some other things that are problematic about it that causes players and dungeon masters not to want to run the game at high levels. And so their rule system is what's driving people's like not liking playing at low level and not liking playing at high level and instead preferring the middle level. And so this is just like, it's an erroneous feedback loop that they're getting. The mechanism of feedback, it's like, you know, one causes the other. If you were to fix the underlying issue of some of the game mechanics that cause early game and late game to be undesirable or less fun, if you were to fix those, you would probably find more people enjoying more parts of the game. So I know that was a thought I had. They were talking about that a bit ago, and I remember I was like, yeah, that's a little bit of logic, not quite logic there they got going on. Okay, cleric, here we go. There's some like, you know, fancy text at the beginning. And then we have, this is mostly, this part right here is kind of mostly the basic beginning of the cleric, where you go about the different levels, the progressions. Their proficiency bonuses are pretty much the same. Now they do have different class features they're gonna get, and we'll go over those in more detail. Now the prepared spells, all the different spell slots are mostly unchanged except for prepared spells. This is a really big change. The number of spells you can prepare is the same as your spell slots for that level. So this is a pretty big change. So for instance, if you're at level 16, you can only prepare one level 8 spell, one level 7 spell, one level 6 spell. Before, what they would do is they would just tell us the number of spells we could prepare based upon, I think, probably your wisdom modifier and some other things. I forget the exact details of it. I'm a dungeon master. But now they explicitly tell you how many spells of each level you can prepare. Now, this probably gives you about the same amount of prepared spells, I would guess, but it does limit the amount of higher level spells you can prepare. And it's gonna have you preparing more of the lower level spells. So we'll see what kind of reception that gets. It's the level plus the intelligence modifier. Okay, so yeah, that's probably true for cleric too. So if we were level 3, that would be, and most clerics at level 3 are gonna have at least a +3 of their intelligence or their wisdom modifier, if not a +4. So we got 6 spells, and that's about 6 spells. So that's about right. I think that's about right. So about the same amount of prepared spells, but they're telling you where you have to put them now, as opposed to just kind of preparing spells wherever. So that's a big change. Hit points are pretty much the same. Proficiencies they look the same to me. Armor training, you get light armor, medium armor, and shields. I don't know if that's different or not. Let me pull it up in the player handbook. They might have changed that at Tigin. All right, I got the bard. Come on, cleric. Nope, that's the same. Light armor and medium armor. So that's the same. I made a whole bunch of notes on my printout here. I want to make sure I hit some of these things. I don't forget them. All right, and then we're down to multi-classing. So they have some new rules on multi-classing, which seemed pretty reasonable. My cat wants attention. Okay, here we go. And here's where we're gonna start to get into the really nice stuff. So channel divinity. The first thing you're gonna find, little guy needs attention down here. Little guy. You gain your channel ability at 1st level now. You don't get it at 2nd level. So they've bumped it up a level. Now, The other thing too is they changed the number of uses that you can get out of Channel Divinity. It used to be that you would just get a Channel Divinity, what was it, once per long rest? Maybe it was long rest or short rest. I think it was like every long rest or short rest it would replenish. Let's take a look. I literally have it right here. Yeah, short or long rest. You'd get one Channel Divinity, short or long rest, and then later on in different levels, you would get more uses of it. Right off the bat, they're giving you more uses of Channel Divinity. You can use your Channel Divinity a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you get all expended uses back when you finish a long rest. So you start off with a proficiency bonus of a +2 at first level. So you immediately get twice as many uses of Channel Divinity, and then you get them back at a long rest. Now, someone might argue that over the course of a typical adventure, you're probably going to take a short rest, which means you would get it back anyway. So depending upon how your game master runs the games and how many times you take short rests, you know, this might come out to be mostly the same amount of uses. So that might be a total wash depending on how you run your game, but you definitely do get it at first level, which is a big change. Next, so Turn Undead is mostly the same. They have some new terms like dazed. Like they give us some conditions and stuff instead of just saying, you know, exactly what the things are that happens when you turn undead. The new thing here to notice, this is huge. Divine Spark. This is a massive, huge, crazy thing that they're throwing in here for folks. Divine Spark. As a magic action, you point your holy symbol at another creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself and focus divine energy at them. Roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus. That's going to be a 2d8 at level 1. And that's another creature you can see. So one creature gets 2d8, and you add the rolls together. You either restore hit points to the creature equal to the total, or force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, it takes radiant damage. On a successful save, it's half damage. So basically, this is giving you healing. This is essentially healing word. At level 1, you get 2 uses. It's at range, and it doesn't do 1d4 plus your wisdom modifier. It does 2d8 healing at range. 30 feet range, 2d8 healing. And that is going to go up as you get higher proficiency bonuses, so it'll get more powerful as you go. Now it does take an action, so it's not a bonus action, but you are getting an additional way to heal folks at very first level. So we're continuing the trend. This is obviously an increase in power, right? It's clearly something they couldn't do before, so your clerics are getting more powerful, and it's also continuing the trend of making death harder in the game, where it's harder and harder to die. I mean, if you have better healing, it's harder to die, you know. Now, you may or may not like that trend. I'm just commenting that it is a continuation of that trend. That's all I'm saying. All right, and then we talked about Turn Undead. Okay, first level spell casting. All right, let's talk about that stuff. They gave you some suggested spells. There isn't a whole lot of changes here, really. You know, you get them back on a long rest. You get more spells at higher levels. They talk about the spell slots. This is where they talk about, I think they talk about the prepared spells too. Or they talk about that somewhere. I already discussed it, but there's not a whole lot of difference here. It's pretty much the same stuff as before. Now, this is where we get into different stuff. We have something at second level called the Holy Warrior, our Holy Order. So at second level, you get to choose one of 3 different orders that you want to belong to as a cleric. You can be a protector, which you are trained for battle. You gain martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor training. You can also be a scholar, which means you gain proficiency in 2 of the following skills of your choice: Arcana, History, Nature, Persuasion, and Religion. Whenever you make an ability check using either skill, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier, because you're a cleric and your intelligence is probably not that great. Or you can be a thaumaturge. You can prepare 1 extra 0-level spell from the divine spell list. See your spellcasting feature for more information on preparing spells. In addition, you regain 1 expended use of your channel divinity whenever you finish a short rest. So that's a pretty nice little feat right there. So I can definitely see, I suspect that most people are just gonna pick Protector because it gives you heavy armor training. And let's be honest, when you're a cleric, there is a world, in a bounded accuracy system, there is a world of difference between having an AC of 18 and an AC of 20. And so most clerics, I suspect, are gonna pick this right here because you get heavy armor training. It's just the way to go. Now, being able to use your channel divinity, you get 1 use back after a short rest. That's pretty nice too, considering that they just gave us some very nice channel divinity options. So I could see that too. The scholar, I would say, is probably gonna be a far less optimal choice, and very few people are probably gonna pick it, in part because you're gonna have other characters that more than likely have those options as well. Obviously, if you just want to purely role play and you don't care about optimization and stuff, then you might pick it just because you want to, and that's fine too. I'm just saying, just from a what is more appealing standpoint, one is a couple of them are clearly better options. Now, this is interesting too, because one of the things that they were talking about in the video they put out yesterday is they don't want certain things in your class to appear to be best in class, or the clear options. Like they were talking about the 2-weapon fighting and why they were making the change, because they were talking about some of the great weapon mastery and stuff like that, and they didn't want certain options in the game to be so much better than others that you kind of had to pick it, otherwise you would lag behind. And I don't know, but I feel like that this maybe is one of those cases where a couple of these, especially this one with heavy armor training, is way better than the other ones. And so I don't know. They're trying. It sounded like they were trying to balance things or something, but I don't know that that's really being achieved right here, because I see at least 1 or 2 of these are way better than the other ones. All right, 3rd level, cleric subclass. You gain the life domain subclass or another cleric subclass of your choice. Now, this is a big change. This is a huge change because we used to pick cleric subclass at level 1, and now we're picking it at level 3. And I love this change. This is really good in my opinion because it allows you to start to play your class a little bit and get a feel for your class before you have to make a really big decision. Like, picking your subclass is big, it's huge. It affects so much in the game. And to make that choice at level 1 is not the best way to do it, in my opinion. I liked the other classes, how you made your big choices at level 3. Like almost all your other classes, your big subclass choices come at level 3. Maybe some come at level 2, but most of it, I'm pretty sure they came at like level 3. And so it looks like they're pushing the cleric that way too. I think that's a great idea. That's definitely better for folks, in my opinion. I would prefer it that way too. And then you get a feat at 4th level. This is nothing new. One of the feats you can pick is an ability score improvement. Okay, here we go. 5th level, Smite Undead. This is new. Oh yes, you know what? I did have a comment about this whole Protector, where you can get heavy armor proficiency training at level 2. I like that it's no longer level 1. You used to be able to take Life Cleric or War Cleric at level 1, and you would get heavy armor proficiency right away. And that caused many wizards and other spellcasters to dip into 1 level of Cleric just to get full plate armor and have heavy armor proficiency. Like, I can't tell you how many times I saw that. Just 1 level of Cleric, boom, so I can have heavy armor. Well, now guess what? You gotta take 2 levels of Cleric so that you can get your heavy armor. So I like this. This makes me happy. I'm sure players won't like this. I suspect, I predict that this will receive some negative feedback in the quote unquote playtest. People will say they don't like this because it's a nerf. It's clearly a nerf to everybody who wants to multi-class and get some heavy armor training. So I think my prediction is they might make heavy armor training just available at 1st level, maybe. Because they clearly have demonstrated that they cave to pressure. They will make things the way that the overwhelming amount of people say they want things. So if enough people whine about it and complain about it because they can no longer do their little cheesy one dip into cleric splash to get their heavy armor proficiency. If enough people complain about it, they're probably going to change it. I, for one, love it because I'm tired of seeing a wizard take one level of cleric just so they can have heavy armor. It is like the lamest thing in the world, in my opinion. There's no roleplay or anything behind it. It's just, I literally want heavy armor. Thank you, here I go. So, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, that's true. You could just splash one level of fighter, potentially. I really want them to clean up the splashing. All of the different splashing that happens that just, ugh. As a dungeon master, ugh. Anyway, let's keep moving. That's a different topic for a different day. All right, 5th level, Smite Undead. You can cause your Turn Undead feature to smite the Undying. Whenever you use Turn Undead, you can roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus, that'll be 2d8 at level 1, and add the rolls together. Cool, I get to add them together. Each undead that fails its saving throw against that use of Turn Undead takes radiant damage equal to the roll's total. All right, so we're gonna Turn Undead, which has effects on them, and we can do damage to them. So that is very nice. That is giving clerics more damage output. Again, we are continuing the trend of increasing the power. I mentioned this at the beginning, and we're seeing it more and more. We're getting more and more power. Now, right now, we're just gonna make that as a neutral comment, right? Because if everything else in the game gets more powerful, like the monsters and the encounters, then it's a wash. It doesn't really matter because the game is balanced. But we are definitely seeing there's a power trend. There's a more power trend going on for sure. And then you get a subclass feature at 6th level. That's great. 7th level, Blessed Strikes. Woo! All right, here we go. We're gonna bump up the DPS, baby. Bump up the DPS. Divine Power infuses you in battle. When a creature takes damage from one of your 0-level spells, any cantrip, or your attacks with weapons, so now your weapon attack, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't use this feature again until the start of your next turn. So this is not limited by your proficiency bonus, short rest, or long rest. You can literally do this on every turn. So you now have a reliable way to do an extra 1d8 damage each turn. So there you go. We're gonna up the damage a little bit. We're increasing the power, baby. You get a feat. Level 9, Holy Order. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, by the way, so if at level 1 or at level 2 you picked Protector so you can get heavy armor training, when you get to level 9, you can choose a second option, which is Scholar or Thaumaturge. I would go with Thaumaturge. You probably don't need to worry about Scholar. It's my personal opinion. So that's cool. You get another option from there. And then you get a subclass feature. 11th level, Divine Intervention. All right, this is mostly unchanged. There's no real change to it. They did technically change this from 7 days. Like if it says if the intervention occurs, you can't use this feature again for 2d6 days. They technically changed it from 7 days to 2d6. But if you notice, the average of 2d6 is 7. So it's pretty much the same. They made a die roll out of it. Now, here's the thing though, and the thing that I wanted to comment. Squeaky, you gotta calm down, buddy. I'm working here. Squeaky needs attention. One of the things, I'm gonna go full screen for this. One of the things that they mentioned in the video that they put out yesterday, and Crawford was talking about this, they were talking about how they want to, they have this like group of things where he was calling Mother May I. And what he was meant by that is there are things and rules and mechanics in the game that work only if the dungeon master allows them to work. They work if you get dungeon master buy-in. They work if the dungeon master is feeling kind and generous or something. But if the dungeon master doesn't want them to work, they don't gotta work. And he's terming those as the Mother May I abilities. And it sounds like what they want to do is take those out and make it more fixed and rigid, such that if a player has a thing that says they can do X, that it will do X. And then the dungeon master, there's less like, gray ambiguity in it. And it's just, it works the way that the player wants it to work, as opposed to having to ask basically, hey, dungeon master, will you allow this to work type of thing? And so, now, along those lines, the entire school of illusion, we should say all illusion spells, In 5th edition, illusion spells, minor image, major image, silent image, all of these different types of illusions that exist in the game in 5th edition, they are 100% in that category of Mother May I. Like, if your dungeon master doesn't allow you to use illusions effectively in the game, they're worthless. They're completely worthless. Like, I learned this very quickly when I started playing 5th edition. I was a player, and basically my dungeon master didn't like illusions, and I tried to do some illusions, and he's like, those don't work. And they had no effect whatsoever in the game. And so I learned that, okay, I can't use any sort of illusion with that dungeon master because he'll just say that they don't work. It was a little bit more nuanced than that, but that is the summary for you. And so illusions fall into that category. So I don't know what they're going to do to the illusion spells, but the way the illusions work in 5th edition right now, they are definitely Mother May I's. And if your dungeon master's not on board with illusions, then they don't work. And you should not be an illusionist because none of your stuff is going to work if your dungeon master doesn't give you the leeway and doesn't roleplay along with it. So that is something that I would like to see them change, because it can be very frustrating to try to use illusions if your dungeon master doesn't cooperate and doesn't give you a little bit of leeway or just like allow it to be somewhat useful in the game, I should say. So anyway, along that line, when we're talking about divine intervention, it still has this mechanic. The DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of any divine spell is appropriate. This is a Mother May I. This is 100% left up to the dungeon master's discretion about what happens. I have seen this happen in the game where it pretty much defeated a level CR40 boss, basically. And I've seen it in a game where it just did what it was supposed to do. It had the effect of a divine level spell. It could be, it could be a 9th level divine spell. So this is definitely one of those situations where the dungeon master can go along with it, and it could be incredibly awesome, or it could just kind of be like, oh, okay, whatever, So this, that's the thing, I do agree to a large extent, I feel, with the whole idea of trying to make things so that, I like dungeon masters should have control over their games and be able to have discretion and stuff like that and make rulings. But there's a point too where sometimes your dungeon master just is a jerk, and sometimes you just want your illusion spells to work. So I feel like as a general overall feeling, I like what they were saying about reducing the Mother May I stuff, but I just don't see that here. I see a contradiction to that line of thinking as far as the divine intervention goes. Now, can you completely purge that whole concept from the game? I don't think so. So how do you take all power and semblance of discretion away from dungeon masters? You can't. It's impossible. So that might just be wishful thinking, and there might be only so much you can do to get you to where your features work the way they're supposed to work. But anyway, I just couldn't help but notice that this is a continuation of that was not expunged from their rules. All right, 12th level feat, we've seen this before. You get a subclass feature at level 14. Level 16, you get a feat, that's great. Divine intervention is now at level 18 instead of level 20, and it automatically succeeds, and then you can use it again after 2d4 days. So they've just made it from level 20 to level 18, and then, obviously you're getting more power sooner, but let's be honest, nobody plays at that level. So it's, of all the groups that play, I bet you 5% of them ever get to that level. So it's rather a moot point unless they're gonna fix some of the problems that make high-level games unenjoyable. And let me talk about that really quick. So in my opinion, there are two things probably that came to my mind when I was thinking about what makes my cat. What are you doing, Squeaky? Was that Squeaky? That was Orange. What was Orange doing up here? He never jumps up here. There are two things that make high-level games unenjoyable, in my opinion. First of all is how long it takes in combat or in the game to do things, because in combat there are so many hit points and so many. Combat can usually go on. High-level combat can go on for hours, guys. I don't know if you've been in high-level games before, but they can easily last hours. you have so many hit points and so many, and it's not just that, you have so many different abilities and things that you can do. Players, how they usually take longer on their turns to decide what they're going to do. And even when they do decide what they're going to do, sometimes you could spend a decent amount of time understanding what a spell or thing does because it's long and complex or something, it's high level. So combat and the game tends to take a whole lot longer at high level than lower levels. And so you see this bog in gameplay. And I swear I had a second point for high level play and I forgot what it was. Whatever. I just drew a blank. There was another reason I think high level play doesn't see a whole lot of action, but I can't remember what it is offhand. So I'm just gonna skip and go to the next point because that's what we do around here. But I know I had an idea. Epic level boons. They have this idea of epic level boons, which is great. It can be fun, but they have to make the higher levels more playable. I think, you know what? That's what it is. That's what I remember now. Ha. High level play is really hard, in my opinion, for dungeon masters as well, because creating high level games that are satisfying and fun and balanced and have the amount of challenge that you're trying to create is really hard. Like once groups get to the higher levels, like it's really hard to create the level of challenge you want. If I want an adventure to be easy, I can try, but something might go crazy and it's way harder than I wanted it to be. Or the adventure might be supposed to be really challenging and hard, but because of all their abilities, it's a cakewalk. And so for dungeon masters, balancing things at higher levels is way more challenging because their whole CR system falls apart and is no good. And so I think that makes it way more challenging for dungeon masters as well. And you also at higher levels, because players get access to all of these abilities and powers and stuff, there are lots of things they can do to basically negate and bypass the game, so to speak. You know, like just the dungeon master could have made an entire adventure, you know, and spent a lot of time working it out, but the players did something like, you know, they scried ahead and then they teleported to that location and then they sniped the boss and then took his thing and got out. And then the dungeon master's like, well, that's great. And that was creative, I suppose, but I spent a lot of time making that and they didn't do any of it, you know, and now, so then they start to wonder, you know, why did I spend all that time creating that, you know? And so there are things like that that you'll think that that's creative, right? And you don't want to tell them not to do that. But at the same time, there's a part of you that's like, well, they kind of just skipped the game and just got the thing. And then we didn't actually get to play the game really. So there are parts like things like that can happen at higher levels. And that's just one example. But there are things like that can happen at higher levels where it just doesn't feel satisfying and as fun as the lower levels, because some of these high level powers just, they allow you to, for lack of a better way of saying it, they allow you to skip the game. You know, it's like if you have a video game and there's this whole section of the game that you were gonna play, but there's an option to just bypass it and skip it all. That's what it is. It's a skip. And some of these combinations and things that they can do allow you to kind of skip the game. And that may be fun and satisfying for some people, but for others, it's not. It just kind of feels like a cheat, kind of. So I don't know where you might fall on that whole thing as far as whether you like that or don't like it, but I think that is another thing that high level play has to deal with that some people may not find very satisfying. All right. Prepared spells, they give you some suggested prepared spells, which you can take or leave as you want. Okay, now we're going to talk about the life domain of this subclass. I mean, the life domain is the subclass. All right, I need to take a quick little break here, so we're going to give you a word from our sponsor.
Hi, Barbarian here. Are you enjoying this content? Would you like to have me guilt trip you really quick? Because here's the thing. My team and I work really hard to create all this content. The videos, the stupid shorts, the TikTok garbage, these Q&A live streams, the adventure creation live streams, all of this stuff. All of the free Dungeon Master resources on the DMLair.com and Lair magazine, which is just amazing and beautiful. Anyway, here's the problem. My team doesn't work for free, and Mrs. Barbarian always wants me to take her out to eat, like every single day almost. And I mean, I like Olive Garden and Texas Roadhouse, but all of those margaritas get really expensive. And you know, if I don't pay the people on my team, they just kind of stop working. I don't get it. Anyway, here's how you can help me help you. Basically, you can just take a whole bunch of cash, you know, put it into an envelope and mail it. No, wait, hold on. Let me think about that. No, you know what? This is the 21st century. Just give me your credit card number. Okay, forget all of that. My lawyers have advised me to instead request that you become DM Lair patrons at the link below. I mean, it still allows you to send me money, but it's legal and you get cool stuff in return. For instance, every month you'll get a new issue of Lair magazine, which contains tons of Dungeon Master resources like adventures, puzzles, traps, monsters, magic items, and more. You see, I'm not just asking for a handout, which is what a lot of people do with their Patreons. I'm actually going to give you stuff in return. So yeah, just, you know, kind of click that link below and become a DM Lair patron, you know, so I can stop putting my foot in my mouth. Thank you.
Okay, my cats need snacks. We're giving my cats some treats right now, because they're going crazy on me. I gotta give them something. Here. Let's go to this camera right here. All right, you maniacs. Yes. Just gotta feed them like chickens. Oh, you know what? I forgot. We're running a giveaway today. There's a link in the chat, probably. You can win Into the Fae, basically. Physical copy of Into the Fae or DM Lair store credit. So yeah, if you want to get in the giveaway, you can join that. I'm going to forget to talk about it because I'm busy talking about this Unearthed Arcana. But we do have a giveaway going on today. I might need somebody to remind me to do the giveaway at the end because I'll forget. All right, let's go back to this. We're going to talk about the life domain, which is one of the subclasses for cleric. Third level domain spells. These are different. They did change the domain spells for life cleric. Yeah, whatever. There was nothing really that popped out to me as to why they did this or whether it was better or worse. But they did change them. So there's always that. Now, one thing to say here too is that all of your subclass features are going to be delayed by a couple levels. You're going to get them later in the game because you're not getting your subclass at level 1. So that's something to be mentioned. Now, as I was looking these over, the Disciple of Life, it looked the exact same. You get that at 3rd level. At 6th level, you get Preserve Life. That looked to be the exact same. I didn't see any changes on that when I did my comparison. At 10th level, Blessed Healer, it's the exact same. There are no changes, except for being delayed by a couple levels because you don't get your subclass until level 3. 4th level, Supreme Healing. Okay, so this did change pretty... instead of getting it at 17th level, you now get it at 14th level. So you're getting it a whole lot sooner than you would before. Now, that does mean that it increases the power of the life cleric because you get it sooner, but there isn't actually any change to the spell or to the feature itself. So other than getting it sooner, it's unchanged. And that's pretty much it for the life domain. There isn't a whole lot of specialness or different things about the life domain. It's mostly the same as it was in the player handbook. So there you go. There's your fancy new subclass. I feel like I wonder if they were writing this up and they're like, you know what, we're just gonna keep everything the same. And then somebody was like, wait a second, you can't just keep everything the same, because then why are we making a new edition? Oh, okay, good point. Let's change the prepared spells. There, let's do that. Let's change the spells they have prepared. Oh, okay, now, sir, that right there justifies having a new edition. Thank you very much. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if that was a thing or not. I'm just making fun of them because there are no material changes to it. All right, character species. Now we're gonna talk about species. By the way, as we're going through this, feel free to ask questions. My moderators are collecting them and putting them into our spreadsheet, and the last part of this live stream, I will be answering your questions about this. So feel free to ask them as we go along here. And I talked about the change from races to species at the very beginning, which I predicted. I won't belabor the point. It's a very smart thing, and I think it's about time they changed it to species instead of races. Pathfinder 2.0 changed it to ancestry, but I think that species is a better identifier, and I think that's the way to do it. However, that said, it would not surprise me if they had changed it to ancestry, because they definitely, I have a feeling that the game designers at Wizards read Pathfinder 2.0. I just get this feeling. Anyway, Ardlings. These are like, they're kind of like, wait, what are those guys? What are the celestial character races that you can get? Man, I'm drawing a blank. What were those things called? They're really good for paladins. You're like a descendant of some celestial being. Aasimar. Thank you, Aasimar. I always draw a blank on things. So Ardlings are kind of like Aasimars, except that they're celestial animals from the Beastlands, I guess. I don't know. I think that Ardlings were released somewhere else too. So this isn't like the first release of them. I don't know where else they came out. I don't remember exactly. But I was just looking through them. I don't know if they changed anything or not from when they were originally set forth, so I can't comment on that. But I was looking through things, and you get to pick an animal ancestry that you're descended from, and then you get certain benefits based on that animal ancestry. And as far as like your creature type and your size and your speed and your lifespan, that's all pretty normal, standard, run-of-the-mill stuff. If your animal ancestry is a climber, you have a climb speed equal to your speed, and once per your turn, you can do unarmed strike to a target, and you can increase the damage by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. So that's pretty cool. Climb speed is usually pretty useful. If you are a flyer, you have vestigial wings. You can basically safely glide downward if you fall, and so you don't take damage from falling, in all essence. You can also, when you take the jump action, you can flap your wings to gain advantage on your ability check and probably jump better. So that's cool. The racer, when you take the dash action, your speed increases for that action. The increase equals 10 times your proficiency bonus. So it's probably going to be about 20 to 30 feet at low levels. And that's when you dash. So you have to take the dash action. It doesn't increase your movement, it's when you dash. And dashing happens in the game, but not nearly as much as you would think. Swimmer, you can hold your breath for up to an hour, and you have a swim speed equal to your speed. Okay, that's cool. And you have cold resistance. Yeah. So those are all pretty cool. I didn't see anything in there that was like, whoa, what's going on? Divine magic, you get a thaumaturgy spell. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace that spell with a different 0-level spell. 100% guarantee you that the first time they finish a long rest, they will replace it. they will get a different spell. That they will get a different cantrip than that, 100% guarantee you. And then keen senses, you have proficiency in your perception skill. So, I mean, Ardling's cool. I like it. There's nothing super like outlandish about it. And then we go to Dragonborn. Now, Dragonborn, my dear Dragonborn. So, I mentioned that in the original player handbook, the Dragonborn have a breath weapon that does a certain amount of damage. And then in the last playtest, Unearthed Arcana that they released, they nerfed it. And they got negative feedback. And so now they have turned it back on, and we see in the Dragonborn that now your breath weapon is more powerful than it was in the previous Unearthed Arcana, because people didn't like the nerf, and lo and behold, people complained about it, and so now you got more damage and stuff. So instead of only having a 15-foot cone, it now gives you a 15-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide. And then the other thing is they increased the damage as well. So in the previous Unearthed Arcana, the damage was reduced, and now they have made it higher again. It's basically 1d10 damage, and then it goes up as you level up. 5th level, 11th level, 17th level, it gets higher and higher. And you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So they have just increased the damage on that again, to make it more palatable, I suppose, appealing to people. This is very interesting though, and I was thinking about this. There was part of me that is wondering if so I have this premise that I'm operating under, that Wizards wants to increase the power of pretty much everything to make it more appealing so that people will buy the products, and that people will transition to 6th edition and they won't stay with 5th edition. And so I feel like this is an intentional thing to sell their products that they're doing. But I wonder if sometimes they're testing that to see what the reaction would be if they don't increase power on things. There's part of me that wonders if Dragonborn, when they released Dragonborn in a previous Unearthed Arcana, I don't know if it was the first one or the second one for 1D&D, but when they released it, when they nerfed Dragonborn, there's part of me that wonders if that was intentional. I wonder if they intentionally nerfed, because they knew they were powering up everything. What if they intentionally nerfed Dragonborn just to see what the reaction would be? To see if people would be okay with it, or if people would be like, no, this is horrible. Because if they believe that by increasing power on stuff, they're going to be able to sell more products, and they're going to be giving people what they want, which kind of usually go hand in hand. So, but if that's their premise and that's what they're operating under, I wonder if every so often they're just throwing some stuff in, I don't know if it's to challenge that premise, or if it's to throw some, because if they challenge their own premise, then they can confirm it or deny it. So like if they threw something in that was nerfed, like a Dragonborn, and then it comes back where people are okay with it, then they're like, well, wow, maybe people would be okay if we didn't increase the power or if we nerfed things. But if it comes back where people are like, no, you can't nerf Dragonborn, well, then it confirms their premise of we have to increase power on things. We certainly can't nerf things, right? So there's part of me that wonders if that was intentional for that reason, of them doing that. I had another thought on that, and I forgot what it was. Yeah, so I don't know. There's part of me that thinks they might be doing that stuff intentionally, just to see what happens. Oh, the other thought was, I remember my other thought now. There's part of me too that, because if they know, and here's the other theory, if they know that people hate nerfs and that people generally want more power, generally speaking, I know there are people out there that don't, and you might be one of them, but generally speaking, people like more powerful options. So if they put out things, that they nerf, right, and then people give feedback that they don't like it, and that allows them to change it, that kind of gives them like this appearance of saying, hey, we there are things that we put out there you didn't like, and now we're changing it, and we're changing it to, because if you put everything you put out, like, and you never change anything, sometimes, this is the thing I would used to do when I worked at a corporate job. I was a writer. I would write something that was, pretty well written, but I would put a couple errors in it intentionally so that my peer reviewer would find them and correct them. Because I knew that if I didn't intentionally plant errors, my peer reviewer would find something else and it might be something that was more challenging to correct or change, right? Like they might delve deeper into like the underlying structure and want like some significant changes. And so I would intentionally plant small problems so my peer reviewer could find a couple small problems, feel satisfied that they reviewed my work, because if you review something and give no feedback or no changes, it's kind of like, did you do your job well enough? And so you give them a couple things that they can be like, hey, that's a problem. And then you can be like, thank you for catching it. I'm fixing it and making it better, right? So there's part of me, and you know, I don't know if other people do that sort of thing, but it definitely made life a lot easier when you planted problems for somebody to find, and then you could just fix the problems really quick and not have to do more work. So I don't know if this is a similar type of thing where they did that intentionally or not, but it's like they had to know people would hate that. Like, how do you not know that if you nerf the Dragonborn's breath weapon that people aren't going to not like it? Like, they must have known. And so the question is, why then did they make the change if they knew people wouldn't like it? Now, I have a couple theories as to why they may have made the change. I may or may not be right. I don't know. And part of me is just hypothesizing on it, you know. But anyway, I thought that was interesting when I was reading it over. All right. Oh, now we have a nice one. Okay, Draconic Flight. Hey, guess what? We know we nerfed the Dragonborn in the last Unearthed Arcana, so we're gonna give you the breath weapon back, but we're also gonna give you flying! Yes, we're so sorry, we nerfed it. Have flying as well. And so this is an addition. It's obviously not in the player handbook, but it's also not in their first rendition of Dragonborn either, in the first Unearthed Arcana. So they're also allowing you to fly at 5th level, which is a caveat. They threw a bone to dungeon masters that they don't have to deal with flying players at low levels. It's at 5th level when they're able to do it. It's a bonus action. You can sprout wings on your back during that time. How long does it last? Temporary flight. You get a fly speed equal to your speed. How long does it last though? Oh, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So you get a flying speed of 10 minutes. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So it's once per long rest. For 10 minutes you can fly. So it's not, you know, permanent flight by any means. But for anybody who's played the game for a hot spell, you know that flying is super useful and can come in really handy in lots of situations. In my experience, it's less, it can be handy in combat, but it's really handy out of combat when you're exploring and you're bypassing obstacles or overcoming situations and problems that are in the way. You would be amazed at how many times having somebody fly makes different parts of the game way easier. So it is a power boost. It's a significant thing to have somebody that can fly. All right, on to Goliath. Okay, so giant ancestry. This is like most of the stuff here. Basically, as a Goliath adventurer, you have this thing called giant ancestry. You are descended from giants. You choose one of the following benefits. You can use the chosen benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So 2 at first level, 3 after you get a bump to it. And then you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So there is a limit to these things, which is good because these are very nice options. As a bonus action, you can teleport up to 30 feet. You guys, you have no idea. That is very powerful ability. Being able to teleport 30 feet is huge. Both in combat, if you get put in some sort of like, you know, wall of force type situation or something, or a wall of fire is separating you, or you just have to get up a cliff, or that's huge. Right there is very powerful. Mobility is a big deal. It is limited by the proficiency bonus number of times, you know. So, and then you can add damage to your attack roll, 1d10 fire damage, or you can add cold damage and reduce somebody's speed by 5. You can knock an opponent prone. I don't like that we don't have a saving throw for this. It really bugs me that there's no saving throw. And the reason this really bugs me that there's no saving throw is, imagine you're in like a boss fight scenario. You have your big boss, and then you can save this up and then just automatically knock him prone. Somebody else can grapple him, you hold him down, and then you have a way to pretty reliably reduce the effectiveness of your big boss by a large margin. So the fact that there's no saving throw on this really irks me. I think there should be. I don't like that. Otherwise, if there were a saving throw, I think that's great, you know, but that there's no saving throw really bothers me. Stone's Endurance. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to roll a d12, add your Constitution modifier to the number rolled, and reduce the damage by that number. So that's good. You get to reduce your damage. That's pretty good. Storm's Thunder. When you take damage from a creature, you basically get a Hellish Rebuke, is what you get. Only it's thunder damage. Out of all these options, honestly, I think the teleport is best in class. Like, hands down, I would pick that teleport every day of the week. Doing more damage is okay, but you're limited to like 2 times per long rest, 2 or 3 times per long rest. That's not that big of a deal. But being able to teleport, that can get you out of a pickle and be really useful. You have no idea. So that is definitely best in class. Reducing damage is okay, but not that big of a deal. I would definitely pick the teleport thing all the time, every single time. And so this is, you know, this is a continuation of like, there's clearly a best in class. There's clearly a superior option, in my opinion. A thing that you should pick, which going along with the previous comment, I talked about this before. It kind of contradicts something that they said in their video about not wanting there to be best in class things that are clearly the best option if you don't want to lag behind. And I think that that doesn't quite fit here. Large form, you can become large. We saw this with one of the fighter subclasses. I forget the name of it. The rune warrior or the rune knight or something like that. So this is just kind of like a repeat of that. They just tossed it on the Goliath, which I guess makes sense because Goliaths are descendants of giants. And powerful build, I'm pretty sure powerful build was on Goliaths before, so that's probably not a change from anything. Yeah, it's correct. It's an Sacred Fire game says it's an illusion of choice. It is an illusion of choice. When you have a clear best in class that most folks, I feel like, who've actually played the game for any point of time will know that this is going to be so much more useful than any of the other things, then it is an illusion of choice. There's clearly a best in class option. All right. Feats. All right, we're going into feats now. We're not even halfway through this document. I'm probably gonna have to pick up my pace here. Unless I don't have a whole lot to say. You know what? I might not have a whole lot to say about these things, actually. The feats have prerequisites now. This is not new. I'm pretty sure they introduced this into a previous Unearthed Arcana. And you can give bonus feats. Dungeon masters are told they can give bonus feats at 20th level if they want to, but groups don't usually play at 20th level, which we just talked about, so that probably doesn't matter. Ability score improvements, there's nothing new here. Over here we have Epic Boon of Fate, Epic Boon of Spell Recall, Epic Boon of True Sight. These are all 20th level feats to take, which, you know, 5% of people are ever even going to get there, and so it's kind of moot. But they're cool. I mean, True Sight especially can be very, very useful, so I would definitely want that one. That's pretty cool. All right, rules glossary. Now we're going to talk about some stuff out of the rules glossary. Oh, they talked. We're gonna hit the aid spell, the attack action, banishment, grappled, guidance, influence, light weapon property, long rest, magic action, prayer of healing, priest pack, resistance, spiritual weapon, and true sight. Now, some of these changes I really, really like. Others of these are perhaps meh, and we're gonna dig through the specifics on these. And you know, another, just a passing comment. They're putting in these epic boons at 20th level. It really seems like they might be trying to emphasize high level play, you know. But like I said before, we have some serious issues with high level play, and if they don't fix those underlying issues, like trying to add more options for high level play is not going to help anything. They need to fix the underlying issues. Okay, ability checks. Okay, yep. Ability check is one of the types of D20 checks, or what do they call them? D20 tests, which is a new term for the Unearthed Arcana. We have skills, action required. I like this idea right here. Under ability checks, they talk about having an action needing to be required. I really like this. Making an ability check requires you to take an action unless a rule says otherwise. Several of the named actions, such as hide and influence, include ability checks. The DM may override this requirement and allow a particular ability check to be made as part of a bonus action or as no action at all. So the reason I like this is it kind of codifies the idea that you need to spend an action to make an ability check during combat, because I have found that some players will try to get more done in a combat round than perhaps they should be able to by essentially trying to get free ability checks in, such as, I don't need to give examples, but I think people who've played the game will know how this works. And so the fact that they codify it and say that an ability check requires an action, I really like that, because the Dungeon Master can always say that it requires an action, but there's player pressure to make it free. And so having the rules back up the Dungeon Master is very, very useful, and they can just say, look at the rules say it, so that's how I'm going to do it. It's nice for the Dungeon Master to be able to fall back to the rules, as opposed to have to make their own ruling and then have the players contest it, you know? And so I like the fact that they're codifying it. That makes me feel better. Not that I would have a problem saying no, but I'm just saying that I know some Dungeon Masters need the rules to back them up, and you know, it makes them more comfortable, and I like that. All right, difficulty class. This has not changed. These are the same difficulty class numbers that we had before. The only problem is, and this is a problem I've always had with these numbers, is that you're telling me that a task is very easy, or that it's medium, or that it's hard based upon these DCs. But that's not really true, because it really depends upon the character's level and their skills and stuff. I mean, once you hit level 10, especially by 15, everybody's rolling 25 or above on things that they're proficient with and have their ability scores bumped up in. And then you have things like expertise and stuff. Like, you know, once you're like level 10, hitting a DC 25, depending on what it is and who the character is, obviously, isn't that hard. You can pretty much get that most of the time. Rolling over a 20 is pretty easy once you get to middle to higher levels. And so the difficulty of something is relative to your level. Now, I know we have a bounded accuracy system, and so that should be less relevant, but I have found in actual practice that it is very relevant. And so I've always thought these numbers were not very good guidelines to go by when you're actually playing the game. It's nice and handy in the rule system because it gives you guidance on how to create adventures and stuff, but it doesn't actually work in the game itself. All right, the aid spell. Oh, okay. This is beautiful. I just have some notes here I'm referring to when I read it beforehand. So the aid spell is going to get trashed. It is going to get absolutely trashed in the feedback. I guarantee you that people are going to hate this, and that Wizards is going to change this because they nerfed it. They totally nerfed it. And this is another example of potentially an intentional nerf, just to see how people, you know, react to it. So it used to be that when you cast the aid spell, that you would increase the maximum and current hit points. Oh, look at this. I'm getting pop-up. You know, I get pop-ups from this stupid security system, and I literally pay them. I don't have the free version. I have the paid version, and yet they still send pop-ups at me, and I hate it. I'm gonna change. I'm literally gonna change from what I use to something else because they give me pop-ups when I pay them. Now, if I were using a free version of something and they give me pop-ups, that's fair, 100% fair. I don't have a problem with that. That's the price you pay for being cheap. But when I pay for their paid version, I don't want pop-ups. I'm sorry, that was a side rant. Okay, anyway, the aid spell. It used to be that it would increase the maximum and current number of hit points. Now it only gives you 5 temporary hit points. That's it. That's it. Once those temporary hit points are gone, they're gone. Now, it used to be when you got the aid spell beforehand, you would get your maximum hit points would increase, and I think it lasted, I'm gonna look it up. I think it lasted 8 hours or something. it wasn't a short duration. It might have been an hour. I'm about to find it right now. But it had a decent duration, I believe, if I can find it. It shouldn't be hard, because this is alphabetized. 8 hours. The aid spell in the player handbook, the aid spell lasts 8 hours and it increases your maximum hit points. That means that like you can get healed past your full hit points. It's way more useful. Way more useful. Now they're nerfing it where it's just 5 temporary hit points, and then once they're gone, they're gone. That's the way temporary hit points work. So I feel like this is a pretty big nerf. It does make it easier to use to just call them temporary hit points. It makes it easier to use, but it's a nerf. And I think this is probably going to get trashed. And there's no concentration either way. So it's definitely more powerful in the original version. So that is not going to survive the playtest. I think Wizards knows that. I think they must know that. I think that's a plant, and they're going to change it. All right, arcane spells. Little note they have in here. They do list the entire arcane spell school, all the different spells that are in it, unless they left one off, like Eldritch Blast or something, and they didn't throw it in there. Did they actually put it in this time? It's gone. It's not here. So they still did not put Eldritch Blast in here. So the Warlock. Wait, hold on. What group is the Warlock in? Is the Warlock in an arcane group, or is the Warlock in a different group? Well, we gotta go back now. Did they give us a bookmark page? Is there a bookmark page in this document? Look at this. You guys see this? Their PDF doesn't have bookmarks. Okay, thank you. Where's the Warlock? The Warlock uses the arcane spell list, I think. They should, Adepts of Arcane Magic. So the Warlock uses that spell list. It literally, they're right there, right? And then if we go to that, I think that was like page 12 or so, because they don't have a bookmark in their PDF. That's high tech. So supposedly Warlocks are arcane. Yeah, it literally says it right here. I'm smart. Warlocks are arcane spell, and they don't have Eldritch Blast. Like, I'm not seeing it. Do you guys see Eldritch Blast on here? I don't see it. I do not see Eldritch Blast. So why are they leaving it out? Like, they literally said in the video that you will have Eldritch Blast, and yet here they go again. They don't put it in the spell list. Like, I don't understand. This is why it's confusing. It causes people to believe that they're taking it out or changing it. I don't know why it's not here. You see? It's going to be a class feature. Okay. Did they say that sometime? Did I miss that? I must have missed that. All right. I must have missed that. I missed the memo. It's hard to get all of those memos when half of the information is released in a video, and the other half is in Unearthed Arcanas, which are constantly changing. So anyway, the note I wanted to make is that they say here that some of the schools of magic have changed. So I don't know if that makes a material difference. That might just be like whatever, who cares? But they did change some of the schools of magic. Not a whole lot of them, but a few of them. I don't know if there was a reason they changed them beyond that it made more sense. That's the only thing I can think of. There might have been an argument too that some sorts of wizards, like if you're a certain type of wizard and you focus on one of the different schools, that you didn't have very good options, and so maybe they changed some of the schools of spells so that certain specialty casters of wizards would get better options. That's a possibility too. I'm not totally sure. I have no idea why they made the changes. If I knew why they were making the changes, it would be easier to give them feedback on their playtest and their decisions, but I just don't know. Armor training. Hey! Armor training is the new name for armor proficiency. Any existing rule that involves armor proficiency now applies to armor training. I have no idea why they're calling it armor training instead of calling it a proficiency. I'm sure there's some reason they changed the naming. There must have been a reason for it. I don't know what that was though. And the penalties, if you're not proficient, is you have disadvantage on a d20 test that involves strength or dexterity, and you can't cast spells. If you're not proficient with like the armor that you're wearing, or you're not trained in it, I should say. Same thing goes for shield. You have to be trained in it, or you can't. You don't gain the benefit from it. There's no real change to the artisan's tools except that they cost a different amount of pieces. So, remember that they cost a different amount now when you're playing the game. Well, I mean, if you're using these rules. The attack option. Oh, I gotta flip. Let's see if I had any notes about this. Oh yes, equipping weapons. So they changed this, they codified this where it says that you can equip or unequip one weapon before or after each attack you make as part of this action. So I kind of like this because I think before it was, I don't know if they actually codified when you, what kind of action or bonus action it would take to equip or unequip a weapon. So that you can do it as part of an attack. I kind of like that idea. I think most groups hand waved it anyway and never really paid attention to equipping or unequipping weapons. So they kind of just work it in and you can kind of do it for free. I'm okay with that. I never paid attention to it anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference to me, except that it just makes things easier to remember and not have to worry about. Oh, the banishment spell. Oh, we're gonna talk about the banishment spell. This is not going to survive the playtest. There is quote unquote playtest. There's no way this is gonna survive. And we're gonna talk about why.
Once upon a time, there was a dungeon master named Timmy. He was too busy to properly prepare for his games, and his players all thought he sucked. But then Timmy's mommy got him Lair magazine for Christmas, reducing his prep time and improving the quality of his games. And then Timmy's players all loved him and thought he was the best dungeon master ever. Be like Timmy and become a DM Lair patron at the link below. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was a word from our sponsor. Banishment. It's a big, huge nerf. First of all, the range is no longer 60 feet. It's only 30 feet. And now I want to be clear. I do want to be clear before I go into this. I like this change. I think this change is good. And I think they fixed it and they made it actually usable in the game. And I'll get into why. But I like this change, but it is a nerf, which tells me that it will not survive playtesting because wizards will capitulate to the feedback they get. I 100% guarantee you. See, there's such a thing as good. There's a difference between good game design and then just giving people what they want. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not. And I definitely feel like they're probably going to give more weight to what people want as opposed to what good game design is. But anyway, let's take a look at this. Its concentration lasts up to a minute, which does not change. The whole thing about sending somebody to a demi-plane doesn't change at all. This is the part that changes that's different. At the end of each of its turns, the target can repeat the save, ending the spell on itself as a success. Now, previously, you could not escape from banishment. The only way to get somebody unbanished was to attack the spellcaster and hope that they lose their concentration. You never got to repeat your saving throw, and now you get to repeat your saving throw. I love this. I love this for two reasons. One, when it gets, I'm a dungeon master, and when one of my monsters gets banished, my monster has a chance to be unbanished and come back and get into the fight. And the other reason I love this is that it's good for players too, because when a player gets banished, they have a chance to make their save and come back into the fight. And so I think it makes it so that banishment is a more usable spell. The dungeon master can use it on players because they're not taking them out of the entire fight. Whereas I, for instance, almost never use banishment on my players because it is one of those horrible game mechanics that makes it so that they are not playing the game. They were literally sitting aside and they're like, well, I got banished. I can't do anything. I'm just gonna sit here. And that sucks. And so as a dungeon master, I don't like doing that to my players. But now that they're fixing it and making it so that you can repeat your saving throw, they're actually making it so that a dungeon master might be able to use it if they want to. So I like that change. I think that's great. Now, the other part they changed too is that if the spell lasts on the target for 1 minute and the target is a certain one of these types, aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend, the target doesn't return. It used to say that if the target was not a denizen of this plane, but it was from a different plane, it wouldn't return. But now they've just simply codified it to where if it's one of these types, it doesn't return. Now, this is taking less of the DM fiat out of it, and just more codifying it into the game, because you could easily have a dungeon master. Let's pretend you cast banishment on an earth elemental. And then the dungeon master is like, well, you know, technically that earth elemental wasn't from a different plane. It was assembled here by a wizard or something, you know? And so then their banishment doesn't work as they thought it was going to work. And it's just dungeon master fiat. Now, some dungeon masters are going to be like lame about that, and they're going to make crap up just so that they don't get permanently banished. Other dungeon masters are going to role play it, you know. But my point is that this takes it less out of dungeon master fiat. It takes it more away from what they were talking about as the Mother May I things, where your dungeon master has to give buy-in, and it makes it just so that it works. And so I like that change. I think that's fine. But it is a big nerf. It's a big nerf because the monsters can repeat their saving throws. And here's the thing, we know that the majority of people play the game as players, and there's only, what, maybe 20% of people that are actually dungeon masters. And so as a dungeon master, I feel like dungeon masters are probably going to be positively inclined toward this spell, whereas players are going to be negatively inclined toward this change in the spell. And so their feedback is going to be predominantly that from the point of view of players, which is going to say they don't like it. Whereas the people who say they like it are going to be probably dungeon masters like me. And our voices are going to get lost in the feedback, and they're going to probably give players what they want, which is not to nerf it, because people hate nerfs unless you have a problem with it, because you have to run games and it sucks. Okay, Barkskin. Ooh, Barkskin got a big old boost in power. Concentration for 1 hour. I don't think that's changed at all. But what changed is, until the spell ends, it used to just change your armor class to 16, and it could never be lower than a 16, which in many cases was a moot point, because most people's armor class was usually higher than that, and using concentration for that is kind of crappy use of concentration anyway, so it probably never got used in the games. I've never seen Barkskin get used in my games, I can tell you that. But now, until the spell ends, the target's skin assumes a bark-like appearance, and at the start of each of the target's turns, the target gains a number of temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So that's going to be probably a +5 at level 1. Or, well, you're at level 2 by the time you get it, so it's a little bit different. 5 temporary hit points at the beginning of each of your turns is very nice. That is going to take the sting off from a lot of attacks. So that's pretty powerful. That's pretty darn powerful right there. You can basically consider that to be a healing word every single round on somebody, to put it in a different sort of context, different point of view, I suppose. So that's a power boost. I feel like that's going to be positively received. Blind sight, I think that they probably just codified some things. I don't know if there's any substantial changes to that. Climb speed wasn't really changed at all. Creature types, there was no changes there. They just listed them and stuff. D20 tests. Oh yeah, this is something else I predicted. I predicted this. So they had this thing where they were saying that when you roll a 20 on a D20 test, that it would grant you inspiration, which they're now calling heroic inspiration. So when their very first Unearthed Arcana came out, where it was like roll a 20 and get inspiration, my immediate reaction was, why? I don't like that. I would rather you get inspiration when you roll a 1. I think that's a much better idea, because then when you roll a 1, you don't feel quite as bad. At least you got inspiration. So they implemented that. I don't think they implemented it because of anything I did. It's not like I influenced them to do this. But I called it, is all I want to say. That was my initial reaction. It should be a 1 instead of a 20, and now they've put it in here. So yay. I'm clever or something. I don't know. Whatever. But anyway, there you go. I like that. Dash action. Yeah. Let's see. What else was interesting here? They talked about difficult terrain. There's a dazed condition. I don't know if that's new or not. That might be a new condition that they have, because it sounds unfamiliar, like I haven't seen it before, but maybe it just never got used if it's in the old one. They talk about difficult terrain, and they talk about some of the things that should count as difficult terrain, which is fine. That's great. Divine spells. They go over the entire list of divine spells, and some of the spell schools have changed. We're not going to talk in depth about that. Exhaustion. This is quite a bit different. I don't think, yeah, this is the exact same as the previous Unearthed Arcanas that they put out about exhaustion. There's no substantial changes, any change at all to it. So we can just skip that over. I don't think I like the new exhaustion system. It does make it easier to track and stuff, but I don't like it. Expertise. I don't think there's anything changed there. Fly speed, nothing new there. Gaming sets, they just codified how much things costed for gaming sets. The grappled condition. Now, I think the grappled condition is mostly the same as when they introduced it in one of the last Unearthed Arcanas, but I really like some of these changes to the grappled thing. First of all, if you're grappled, you have disadvantage on attack rolls against any other target than the grappler. So I can attack the person grappling me and not have disadvantage. I like that. I think that's good. That makes being grappled. Hold on a second. Wait. No, I'm getting confused. That was restrained. Grappled is now more powerful. Oh, wow. I had a brain fart. Grappled is now way more powerful than it used to be. Because grappling never used to give you disadvantage. It only reduced your speed to 0. But now grappling gives you disadvantage on attack rolls against any other target than the grappler. Wow, that's a big bump in power for grappling. Dang. Okay, so there's some power bump. And then they tell you can move people when they're grappled as well. The thing that I like about this, though, so I'm not sure how I feel about the big power bump. That's pretty significant. Imposing disadvantage in 5th edition is a big deal. So that just made grappling really powerful. But you got to make sure that you have a free hand. I have had it happen in many of my games where somebody tries to grapple and they don't have a free hand. And then I'm like, well, do you have a free hand? The hand that's free? And they're like, no. Like, you can't grapple then. Oh. So make sure you enforce that. I do like how you can escape now. They give you a way to escape. At the end of each of your turns, you can make a saving throw against the grappler's escape DC, and then you can get away. And the escape DC is now static. The rules are later on. There were somewhere I found the rules for being grappled. When you have the grappled condition or somebody grapples you, there's a static DC. I think it's like 8 plus your strength modifier plus your proficiency bonus. I could be wrong, but I really like that there's a static DC and it's no longer their athletics check, because I'm going to tell you what, man, I could never get ungrappled in 5th edition. Once the barbarian or the fighter grappled one of my monsters, it was hopeless, because they would have such good athletics checks that there's no way that I'm escaping from their grapple ever. And so the fact that it's now a possibility to actually be able to escape from a grapple makes me feel better. I mean, as the person who is always getting the shaft on being grappled, I can actually now maybe have a chance at escaping. And I don't have to spend an action trying to do it. I automatically get an attempt to escape the grapple. So I like that. And you know what? I almost feel like because they're making it easier to get ungrappled and they're giving me an automatic check to get out of it, that maybe it's not quite so bad that I have disadvantage on attack rolls, because I'm able to get out of the grapple easier. And so maybe it's kind of like a give and a take, you know? So you know what? That might not be that bad now that I consider the totality of the change. All right, let's keep moving. Guidance. There's not, the big change here is that you can use guidance now as a reaction. So it used to be that you would cast guidance on somebody ahead of time and then you would concentrate on it. I'm pretty sure it was concentration. if it wasn't was it concentration? Hold on a second. Because if they're taking away the concentration thing, that's a pretty big change. Does anybody in chat know? Was guidance concentration before? Because I have had people cast guidance when they were it is concentration. It is concentration. I've had people like have like spirit guardians up or something and then cast guidance, and I just guess I never realized it was concentration. But anyway, it's no longer concentration, and it's a reaction. You take the reaction in response to you or an ally within 10 feet of you failing an ability check. So they've changed a little bit. I don't know how I feel about that. But the thing that I did want to comment on is define failing an ability check. How do you define that? And here's my point. Not all ability checks are black and white. Some ability checks have like gradients of success and failure. If you, for instance, make an Arcana check to try to determine, where like a monster is from, then if you roll a 10, I might not give you any information. If you roll a 15, I'll give you more. If you roll a 20, I'll give you even more. A 25, I'm gonna tell you a whole bunch. And so some ability checks have like, different levels of success and failure, especially when you're trying to get information or lore from something. If you're doing an insight check, it might be the same. If you're doing, I don't know how you define failed, right? How do you define that for a lot of these ability checks? So I think that's a problem. There's a lot of like gray area and ambiguity right there built into that rule. All right, let's keep going. Heroic inspiration, or they did talk about the help action. There's not a whole lot that changed or whatever there, I don't think. Heroic inspiration. The thing they've changed from how it was in the player handbook is that heroic inspiration, with inspiration, you can expend it to give yourself advantage on a D20 test. And then it says, you decide to do so immediately after rolling the D20. So in the original rules from 2014, you were supposed to decide before you rolled, and then you roll with advantage. This right here is, you get to roll first, see if you rolled well or not, and then you get to roll you with a second time if you want to, and so that's way more powerful. So it's definitely an increase in power. Now, I will say that many groups did it that way for the longest time because, in my opinion, they didn't know what the rules probably actually were, and so they just re-rolled it instead of rolling them both at the same time. So they might just be changing this to reflect how people generally play the game. And I think they did mention that in one of their videos, that some of their changes were to reflect reality or actual practice as opposed to the rules. So that's possible why they are changing that. But my point is that is a power increase. It does make it way more powerful to be able to roll first and then decide whether you're going to use an inspiration or not. So that's my only point I had there. Let's keep going. The hidden condition, they're codifying the rules a lot more, like what it means to be concealed and all of these kind of different things. So I like the fact that these rules are a little bit more specific and codified in what they do and don't do. The hide action. Okay, this is a change. I think this might have been released in a previous Unearthed Arcana, but basically instead of having to make your stealth check compared to the monster's passive perception, an opposed check, you're really just making a DC 15 dexterity check, stealth check. So they have a static DC for hiding, which is higher than most monsters' passive perception checks. So they made it a little bit harder to hide. And I kind of like that. This is a change that makes the game easier to run, because I have a static DC and I don't have to compare it to my monster's passive perception. So I kind of like this change, I think. So yeah, I like that one. They talked about incapacitated condition. Oh, influence. All right. The influence action. I'm not gonna go into too depth here, but basically they talk about different. I really like this change, by the way. I like how they did this. So you can take an action to influence a creature. Now you have to consider the creature's starting attitude, whether they're indifferent to you, whether they're friendly, or whether they're hostile. And then based upon their starting attitude, that helps determine, what you're able to get them to do. So then you interact with them, and then there's an ability check, and you get to choose the type of spell that you're trying to do. Okay. And the way this works is, like, for instance, if there was an animal that you're trying to gently coax, right? It's animal handling. If you're trying to intimidate someone, intimidate, persuade, and deceive, right? The minimum DC for the check is 15, or the creature's intelligence score, whatever is higher. I kind of like having a static DC. A lot of times previously in 5th edition, what you would do is they would roll a deception check, and then you were supposed to have an opposed roll where the bad guy would roll a insight check, and then you would determine whether it was successful or not. And I kind of like the static DC. I think that's cleaner, and it's a more elegant solution, in my opinion, than having to do the opposed checks. Because the opposed checks, two things. One, they take a little bit longer. And two, the bad guy could just roll a 2 and then get a 5, and they succeed. But like, that's not a good representation of how hard it would be to deceive or persuade somebody, just because they happen to roll a low number. So I think that it makes more sense from a gameplay and from a reality standpoint to have a static DC, as opposed to just leaving it completely up to chance on an opposed roll. So if you succeed, the creature does what it's asked. If it fails, you must wait to make the same request again. 24 hours is the default. So I kind of like that. Now, the one thing, now it says that if you succeed, the creature does as asked, okay? But there are limits to what an indifferent, a friendly, and a hostile creature are going to do. And it says that the adventurers need to succeed on one or more charisma checks to convince a hostile creature to do anything on the party's behalf. However, the dungeon master might determine that the hostile creature is so ill-disposed toward the character that no charisma check can sway it. So the dungeon master can still decide that, look, this guy hates your guts. There's no way that you can be successful. And that is appropriate. That should definitely be a thing, where the dungeon master can decide that it is impossible to influence that creature. And so that is very important to still have that codified in the rules. But other than, overall, I like the whole influence action thing and how they have it laid out. All right, let's see. Invisible condition. I don't think that there was. They might have codified some things around it, but there was nothing crazy about it. The jump action. Okay, this is crazy. I don't know if this changed from a previous Unearthed Arcana or not, or if this is invisibility got changed a lot. It did. Okay, well now somebody in chat is saying that invisibility got changed a lot. So I suppose there was a significant change to it. What was changed? You can't be seen? I don't know. Is there an invisible condition in the player handbook? Oh, it does say, yeah. They added a surprise component to it. The attack rolls have disadvantage, your attacks have advantage. That's the same. There's no difference there. Unseeable, you can't be seen, so you aren't affected by any effect that requires its target to be seen. I don't see any difference. Like, I'm literally looking at the invisible thing from the conditions in the player handbook, and I'm looking at the new thing in this Unearthed Arcana, and I don't see any material differences. I might be missing something, overlooking something, but it looks the exact same to me. It's different words, different terminology, but for all intents and purposes, it looks the same to me. If I'm missing something, please correct me. The jump action. Okay, what I wanted to talk about here is this is crazy. You now have a superhero jump. Check this out, you guys. All right, you make a DC 10 strength check. Okay. If you don't move at least 10 feet, you have disadvantage on it. Okay. On a failed check, check this out, you guys. It's a DC 10 strength check. If you fail, you leap 5 feet horizontally or vertically. You guys, how many of us here 5 feet vertical? A 5 feet vertical jump. That is like ultra elite athlete level, you guys. Like seriously, basketball players. How high can these basketball players jump? You know, like these guys can like dunk and do all this stuff, but are they clearing 5 feet? They might be, I don't know. But they're elite basketball players, okay? Or the people that do the high jump over the bar, you know? Like I don't know what they're clearing. They might be clearing 5 feet. I'm not familiar with that stuff. But they're not just jumping straight up and reaching for something. They have a specific thing where they jump over the bar and land, you know, the flop or whatever they call it. So to be able to fail your athletics check of a DC of 10, which is really low, by the way, and still jump 5 feet vertically is crazy. That's crazy. I guarantee you that one shot, what is it? No, D&D Shorts. I guarantee you that D&D Shorts is going to release some short about this right here and how it's insane and crazy. I guarantee you he's going to do something on this. 100% guarantee you, because this is nuts. This is the type of thing that you'll see in his shorts. 100% guarantee you. On a successful check, the check's total determines the distance in feet you can clear, horizontally, or half that if it's vertical. So if you make like a 16 on your check, you can jump 8 feet vertically. If you roll a DC 16 check, you can make an 8 feet vertical jump. 8 feet vertical jumps. Dude, that's crazy. In full armor, your backpack is on and everything. This is nuts. This is really, really crazy. I'm sure that people will like this because it's powerful. It's not realistic at all. Not that realism is always a guide for how things should be in the game, because we're making a game system, not a true to life representation of reality. But still, it's kind of crazy. All right. The light weapon property. Basically, if you're using a light weapon in either hand, you can make one extra attack with the secondary light weapon as part of the same action. But you don't get to add your bonus, your damage bonus modifier to it. I'm okay with. I think this is fine, because if you're giving up a shield in one hand, it makes sense that you can get an extra attack with the weapon you're holding in your other hand. You know, so that makes sense to me. And it's a light weapon, which usually have a 1d6 damage as opposed to a 1d8. So if you're giving up a shield and you're limiting your damage to 1d6, I feel like getting an extra attack is fair. You know, otherwise, why would you wield light weapons if you have to use up your bonus action to attack every time? So I think this change seems fair to me. They might have changed this in a previous Unearthed Arcana, and this might just be a duplicate. But I just wanted to mention that I think that seems pretty even-handed. Long rest. I don't know if this is new, but you now can regain all of your hit dice on long rests. You get them all back. You don't just get half of them, you get all of them back. So that's definitely more power. Your short rests are going to be more effective because you're going to have more hit dice theoretically to be able to use them and stuff. Not that most groups use long rests and short rests, but yeah, there are some groups where you're long resting all the time, and yeah, I don't know. It depends on how the game's being run by folks. And then they have interrupting the rest and stuff and rules around that, which I think seem reasonable, and I kind of like these. They have a magic action, makes sense. Movement is mostly unchanged. There's no difference there. Climbing and swimming and stuff. Okay, special speeds. Okay, this is something that I really like that they changed for special speeds. It says some creatures have special speeds, such as a climb speed, a fly speed, or a swim speed. If you have more than one speed, you must choose which one to use each time you make your move. For example, if you have a speed and a climb speed, you can use one of those speeds when you move, not both. during the same move. I like this. Now, in the original rules, you could switch and swap between your different speeds, and it sometimes made tracking how much movement you had left confusing based upon what speeds, and like if you had like a normal speed of 30 and then a fly speed of 60, you know, you could basically walk 25 feet and then fly 60 minus 25 feet. Sometimes it got confusing. So, but the fact that you can only pick one type of speed per move works for me. I like this. And by the way, that's exactly how Pathfinder 2.0 does it as well. So like I said, I think they're reading Pathfinder and taking some tips. Couldn't hurt things. All right. Prayer of Healing. There's some really relevant stuff here. Second level spell, instantaneous, and you gain the benefit of a short rest when you do this. Now this is new. I'm pretty sure that this is not in the normal spell, the original spell, of getting the benefits of a short rest. So at second level, the second level spell, which you're gonna get at 5th level, you're gonna be able to cast this and get an additional short rest just by casting this spell. Now it does take 10 minutes, right? But you get the benefits of a short rest, which obviously allows you to get your hit points back through using hit dice, but you also get class features back that get expended that are renewed by short rest. If you're a warlock on a short rest, you get your spells back. If you're a fighter and you use action surge or second wind, you get those back. And so getting the benefits of a short rest is big. That is a big deal, and that introduces a lot of power by doing that right there. I feel like this is probably a best in class spell. Like if you don't take this spell as a cleric, you're really shortchanging yourself and your party, because you can really extend your guys' power by giving a lot of your buddies a short rest for the price of a second level spell. So that's really big. That's a big deal right there. That was my comment there. Squeaky is bothering me. All right, I think I need to get some more tea here. It's tea time.
Hello, Barbarian here. I'm interrupting your regularly scheduled program with a very important announcement. Now, some of you have been watching the DM Lair for years now, and others of you are new here. And if you're new, that's okay. And if you're really old and you have like gray hair or no hair at all, I mean, that's okay too. We do not participate in ageism around here. In fact, this is an ism-free zone. There are like absolutely no isms around here. In fact, if your name ends in ism, you should leave now. Well, you know what? Just to play it safe, if you have any of the following letters in your name, you should leave. I, S, or M. Yeah. Anyway, the important announcement. Well, I'm really just going to ask you for money, but I'm going to dress it all up in fancy marketing clothes so that you'll never even realize that I'm manipulating your fragile emotions to make a quick buck. Trust me, this will be the world's best sleazy plug. Won't you please consider becoming a DM Lair patron at the link below? You see, my team and I work really hard to publish Lair magazine every month for our beautiful patrons. And when we don't have enough patrons, well, revenue dips. And when revenue dips, we have to do cutbacks. And well, that's really sad. You see, people always blame companies when they have to do cutbacks, but really it's your fault as the consumer for not buying all their crap. Or it's because they're trying to maximize shareholder value for stockholders. Or, you know, the C-suite could just have their heads up their butts because, you know, that happens a lot. Anyway, I'm not just asking you to throw your money into a hole. When you become a DM Lair patron, you're going to get cool stuff every month. 5th edition adventures, monsters, traps, puzzles, magic items, digital maps, and more. So if you don't want me to have to fire Penguin Butt and Goliath Cleric, become a DM Lair patron today at the link below. Oh no, I just realized that I have an I in my name. Barbarian has an I in it. I guess I'm gonna have to fire myself. Bye now.
Okay, we're gonna give Squeaky we're gonna give Squeaky some catnip now. All right. I have we're gonna get the penguin all spiced up with catnip. I'm getting low on catnip. Wait a second. Well, this is... it's probably still good. I don't think catnip goes bad. This is old catnip, though. Maybe it does go bad. All right, Squeaky, let's go. Squirty, you want some too? Huh? I'm gonna put out another one. If Squeaky is a hog, he will take all the catnip. There we go. What are you doing? Space them out a little bit more. All right. We need to go back to our... I have the wrong camera. Oh man, I have the wrong camera on that scene. You can kind of see him a little bit. One camera gives a better view of it, I suppose. But yeah, you can still see him on there. He's gonna roll around and be crazy for a little bit. All right, going back to this right here. They go over the primal spell list them all off. Again, they did change some of the schools of spells for that magic, and we're almost done. We got like one page to go, and then we're gonna do I'm gonna get to your guys' questions. So if you had questions, feel free to, and they're not already asked and on the spreadsheet, go ahead and throw some on there, and then we'll be answering questions. New version of the resistance spell. Oh yeah. So it used to be that resistance sucked. Resistance was like, I think it was a concentration spell. You had to cast it in advance. I mean, it was horrible. Nobody used resistance. Guess what? Resistance actually is okay now. People might actually use it. So this is a positive change. They took a spell that sucked and they made it usable. Basically, as a reaction, you can cast this spell when an ally within 10 feet of you fails a saving throw. And that's cool. So we finally have something useful, because before resistance was just garbage. So there you go. Ritual casting, searching action. There's not a whole lot of new stuff there. Short sword. This is interesting. Does anybody know why? A short sword is now a simple weapon rather than a martial weapon. That is just so odd. I would love to know why they made that change. Like, what are they going for there? Like, if we're supposedly playtesting this material, knowing the reason behind that and what it was supposed to achieve would be useful for me to actually give, feedback on that change. But just thrown in there randomly, I have no idea why it was changed. So anyway. Slowed condition. I'm not gonna talk about that. Spiritual weapon. Oh. Spiritual weapon. This is a big, huge nerf. This is a big, fat nerf, and I 100% again guarantee you this will not survive the next UA. They're going to change this because players will hate this. What they did is they made it so that spiritual weapon is now a concentration spell. It is now a concentration spell. It used to just last for a minute, period, end of story. You now have to concentrate on it. And as we know, concentration is a mechanic that, is very, very highly prized. Like, if a spell has concentration, you can only cast one of them. And so to concentrate on spiritual weapon means you can't cast other concentration spells. So like Spirit Guardians or other things. So I suspect that this, other than that, I think it's the exact same. I don't see any other changes to it, but they added concentration, which is a big nerf. So I think that people are probably not going to like that. And I don't think that will survive. That'll definitely get changed. I mean, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for it to be concentration. I just don't think that, because the way they are conducting this market survey, this market analysis, is essentially they're seeing what people like and don't like, and if the majority of people like something, they keep it. If they said that if something dips to around like 60% or something, then they change it. So if the majority of people don't like this, they will change it. And I think the majority of people will not like this. So they're really just, for lack of a better term, they're just capitulating to what the majority of people want, you know, as opposed. See, I would expect, here's the thing. We'll go full camera for this. There's a certain extent to me that expects game designers to make decisions that are best for the game and best for gameplay. Things like balance, for instance, are things that game designers should think of. Now, companies who want to sell products, marketers, they think about what people really want and what's going to sell the most of the product and giving people the thing they're clamoring for. You know, that's how marketers think. That's how companies that want to sell things think. Game designers, maybe you should think a little differently. You know, like what's best for the game, what's best for gameplay, you know, how do things balance out a lot, you know, and what things are, you know, dungeon masters gonna find appealing as well, because, you know, let's not forget that if dungeon masters don't like things and dungeon masters don't use 1D&D, then nobody's playing 1D&D because there are no dungeon masters who are running it. And so this is like another, along this line of thinking, this is another fallacy of the way they're conducting this market analysis that they're calling a playtest. Because the majority of people are players and not dungeon masters, they're going to get the feedback from the survey is mostly going to be weighted toward what players prefer, and it's not going to be weighted toward what dungeon masters prefer. And so the trend is going to sway toward creating things the way players want, while mostly ignoring what dungeon masters want. And the problem with that is, if you produce a game that players love and dungeon masters hate, nobody's playing that game because nobody's willing to run it. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that. You know, I'm making an extreme example to prove a point, to make a point, you know. And so you really need to consider what dungeon masters think about things as well, and not just players. Because if you alienate all the dungeon masters and the dungeon masters all walk away to, let's say, Pathfinder 2nd edition, then nobody's running 1D&D, and it doesn't matter how much the players love it because they can't find games to play in. So you got to think about dungeon masters as well. Big fallacy and flaw in how they're doing their market analysis, in my opinion. All right. Study action. I do like how they clarified what the different areas of knowledge actually do. Like, Arcana pertains to spells, magic items, eldritch symbols. History applies to these things. Investigation applies to these. Nature applies to these. I like that they codify this a little bit better, because the rules as written in the 2014 player handbook didn't really specify this very well. So I like that they're getting more specific, because it takes a lot of that gray area out of there. All right. We are on the last page. Look at this. Swim speed, tool proficiency, teleportation. They just put some clarifications about how teleportation works, basically, which is mostly how I've been using it anyway, so I don't think there's anything different there. Tremor sense, they specify that tremor sense doesn't count as a form of sight, which is probably an important specification because I don't think it was mentioned in the 2014 rules. And then they have some information about true sight. There may or may not be changes to this. It's usually only applicable for dungeon masters and their monsters anyway, because players almost never have true sight. And then unarmed strike, I'm pretty sure this is unchanged from the last Unearthed Arcana they put this in. This is where it tells you what the escape DC is for a grapple. It's 8 plus your strength modifier plus your proficiency bonus. I like that. I think that's really good. But again, I don't think that's new. I think that is pretty much the way they had it in the last Unearthed Arcana. Why these things get repeated, when they're not new. I don't know. Okay, that's it. We are through the entire Unearthed Arcana. And now we are going to transition into the second part of our live stream, which is answering questions. So I'm just going to go to the questions you guys have posed, and I'm going to answer them. It's pretty straightforward. I just, whoops, I clicked the wrong button. It only works if I click the right button. And we don't have that many questions. Whee! Unless people start asking them. How do I zoom in? Oh, that doesn't do anything. I don't know how to zoom in. How do you recommend making encounters fit the new power level of the PC options? Do you have any tricks for making them the right amount more challenging? Okay, so one of the things that they mentioned in the video they put out yesterday is that there will be new rules for the Dungeon Master regarding creating encounters, and I presume that means getting the right amount of challenge and stuff. So they're telling us that they're supposed to be having that the new books coming out in 2014 for 6th edition, 1 D&D, are going to have rules for Dungeon Masters to help them create encounters of the appropriate challenge. So we don't have them right now. So we're basically this is what's confounding about this playtest, is that we're being given new powerful options for characters. Like, hands down, the new cleric options, the new cleric class is really powerful. And we have these new, and there's going to be more of them. I guarantee you, every single one will have increased levels of power. Okay, that's fine, that's great. As long as the Dungeon Master has the tools that we need to create appropriate challenges, the encounters of the appropriate challenge, then that's great. We can, but we don't have that. We're promised we're going to get it, but we don't have it right now. So the question is as I'm playtesting, how am I supposed to balance these things, right? And if they start using this new cleric that's really powerful, but they're using an old fighter and an old paladin and an old rogue who are much weaker, then how do I balance my game while we're in this shift where I'm using a new powerful option, but the older powerful options? Like, how am I supposed to playtest that? How can I playtest that? How can I give you meaningful information about how it actually, because what's a playtest? Like, what is a playtest? My team and I are releasing a rules light system for mass combat. This is going to be coming out next year, I think February. It's a mass combat system. But it's a short rule set. It's not like a big book about mass combat. It's not like a 200-page book. It's like a short rule set about mass combat. And so my team and I are playtesting it, right? But the only way for us to playtest it is to have the entirety of the rules present, so we can see how everything interacts with each other, how everything interacts. Does this work well? Does that work well? Oh, this doesn't work well. Oh, we need to tweak that. We need to tweak that. Okay, now we tweak everything, and guess what? We're getting together again tomorrow to playtest again, because we tweaked some stuff. So in order to do a real playtest, you need to have the totality of the system and then use the totality of the rule set together to see how things interact with each other. Because right now, if I have the new cleric with old classes, then I don't know what the interaction is. I can tell you that it doesn't work right now because the new cleric is too powerful and the other characters aren't contributing and feel way challenged, but the cleric doesn't. And I can tell you as a dungeon master that I'm having trouble balancing things because I have new powerful options over here. But you see, so if I don't have the totality of the rules, how can I actually give it a real playtest and give you meaningful information? And so this is why throughout this entire live stream I kept saying playtest, because it's not really a playtest. This is a market analysis. They're trying to see what people want so they can give them the new 6th edition that people want and are excited about. You know, that's really what they're doing. So the question about how do I balance the encounters, I don't know. I would guess. I would just be I would use my experience as a dungeon master to make my best estimate of what would be challenging if I'm going for a challenging encounter, or if I want an easy encounter, because those are good too. I would just have to use my experience and take my best educated guess. That's the only tool I have. And in all fairness, it's the only tool we have right now, because we all know that their current challenge rating system that was published in the 2014 books doesn't work very well, especially with new powerful options like Tasha's and stuff coming out. So our tool set is lacking as dungeon masters. And I have nothing for you except a hope and a prayer that they fix it someday. Oh, I answered that. What changes would need to be made for the stuff in this Unearthed Arcana to be allowed in your games? I mean, some of the stuff is a codifying of the rules that just gives the dungeon master, like it takes away some of the ambiguity of things and it makes things clearer. You know, I like that. However, some of the stuff, it's like there's a massive power increase. And so for me to allow this stuff in my games, I need the whole system. Like I can't take part of your next edition and I can't take pieces of your next edition and like introduce them piecemeal into my game. Like I can't, because it's gonna throw things off. It's gonna upset the balance and stuff, and it's just gonna, you know what I mean? And I also cannot introduce things into the game either when I have the rule sets being published the way they are. Like we have 3 PDFs right now. So I have to reference different PDFs for different rules. And then in the most recent PDF, there were a whole bunch of things included in it that I don't think changed from a previous PDF. I think they're the same. But I could be wrong. They could have been changed and I have to do a more careful comparison. Other things did get changed from a previous PDF. And so even with just 3 PDFs, there's a certain amount of confusion, I think, about which rules are the ones which rules should I go by, and did this one actually change anything or not from the previous PDF? And so I feel like it needs to be clearer too. I need the book. I need the entire complete book so that I can easily reference and find things and run the game at my game table. Because right now, if I try to introduce any of these options and stuff, like it's just gonna be kind of mayhem as we're trying to reference different PDFs and stuff. And then obviously if the cleric is like really, really powerful now and I'm trying to run it with other normal classes, then that produces problems too. So I feel like I need the totality of the system really to use this in my games. I need to wait until 2014 to when they actually give me the books, and then we can actually run the game 1 DnD 6th edition and stuff. So that's probably, it's not so much changes that I need to the content itself. Like if they're going to increase the power of all of the classes and stuff, that's okay. I'm not really complaining about that, because as long as they change the challenge rating system and give me the tools I need as the dungeon master to properly create balanced, quote unquote, encounters and adventures. And when I say balanced, all I'm trying to say is I want to be able to create easy, medium, or hard encounters and adventures. I just want to be able to get that level of difficulty more or less right. If I have the tools that I need to do that, then it doesn't matter how powerful the characters are. If the characters all become super powerful in 6th edition, that's fine as long as I have the tools I need to create encounters and adventures of the appropriate challenge level for those powerful characters. That's all I'm asking for. So if I have those, then you can make these guys as powerful as you want. I don't care. I just need to be able to make sure my monsters can keep pace and I can deliver the game experience that I want to deliver as a dungeon master. What upsides do you see in 1 DnD? Whether they're upsides for DnD or something else? I think the biggest upside that I can see from some of these rules as they're coming out is that they're clarifying things. There are some rules we had from the original 2014 player handbook that weren't very clear or that were ambiguous and stuff like that. And I think we're getting some clarification on some of those things, which is helpful. So I think that's an upside where they're fixing some of those things. Overall, I can't help but feel that most of the changes they're making are just an increase in power for the sake of increasing power to sell books and introduce a new edition and to make that new edition appealing to people. Because if the new edition doesn't have any material changes and they just clarify rules, but like there aren't more powerful options, then nobody's gonna buy the books. Like if you're gonna bring in a new edition or one D&D, if you're gonna make books, people have to buy the books. So you have to give them a reason to buy the books. And the only reason to buy the books is if something's different. And if the rule set is mostly unchanged, because it's gonna be backwards compatible, is what they're saying. If the rule set is mostly unchanged, then what's the compelling reason to buy the books? Because the options are more powerful, right? You get to do cool new stuff, things you couldn't do before. So I feel like there's some things that are beneficial, but I feel like the overwhelming reason that what I've seen so far is really just to give a compelling reason for people to buy their product. I think that's really what I'm seeing from the changes I've seen so far, right? Like, are they changing things that are like really bad in the game right now? There have been a couple little, life improvement changes perhaps we've seen so far, but what right now is really broken and messed up in 5th edition that needs an overhaul, that warrants a new edition and new core books, a new player handbook, a new dungeon master guide, new monster manual? Like, what's really messed up? The only thing, as a dungeon master, as someone who's been playing this for a long time and played other editions too, the only thing that's really messed up from my point of view as a dungeon master are probably two things. One, there's ambiguity in rules the dungeon master has to make their own rulings about it. And that's okay most of the time, but sometimes it's a pain in the butt. And you can get into discussions with your players because they don't agree with your ruling. The other thing that's messed up is trying to balance things and create encounters of the appropriate challenge that I want to create them at. Because the CR system doesn't work, and as they create new powerful options, it gets even more broken. Those are the only two things, in my opinion, that are kind of messed up in 5th edition that warrant a new edition, one D&D. But do you need a new edition for that? Yeah, I don't know. How often do you give your cats a bath? You don't give cats baths, dude. Cats clean themselves. There are very few cats in this world that you can give a bath to and not get murdered. Like, the majority of cats, you try to put the water on them, they're gonna claw your face off. They will freak out beyond all levels of freak out, and they will rip your face off. Dude. Now, some cats like baths, but most cats, it's not gonna happen, man. Do you feel that this Unearthed Arcana is a step up from their previous releases, or is it another nail in the coffin? I mean, I don't know that it's a nail in the coffin. I don't think that there's necessarily a nail in the coffin, because at the end of the day, they're definitely going to create a product that people will buy, because their entire methodology of how they're going about it is intended to guarantee that people will buy the new books. Because they're giving the whole market analysis they're doing is they're finding out what are the features and what are the changes that people like. And if we can find out what people like, then that is a better guarantee that when we make these new books, they're going to buy the books. And so the whole way that they're going about this is kind of to try to not have it be a nail in the coffin, right? Because they're trying to make products that will appeal to people and that people will go out and buy, and so that's really, so is it a step up from the previous releases? Like, they're just giving you more power and they're giving you some more options and stuff, does it make it materially better? Maybe. I mean, at the end of the day, we've been playing the same edition for, what is it, 2014? Now it's 2022. How many years is that? 8 years. So we've had this edition for 8 years, It might be getting a little stale. People might be getting a little bored with the options that we have, and they're ready for something new and fresh, right? And everything gets an update, And so, I don't know. Does that make it better? Maybe. It depends on your point of view. It depends on what you're looking for in the game. What is the too long didn't read version on the one D&D survey video? The one they came out with yesterday? I mean, they talked about a whole bunch of different stuff in that video. It was like I think it was a 50-minute long video. And I took some notes on it as I was listening to it while I was at the gym today, and I took some notes on it. Let me see if I have my notes here. I'm not gonna give you the whole too long didn't read. Okay. They talked about a bastion system that they plan on releasing, a home base that players can have. So this is essentially probably going to be what we already have in Acquisitions Incorporated. Like there is a book they published for 5th edition called Acquisitions Incorporated, where you get a home base, you get a bastion, you get, and so I think they're probably going to rehash that and put it out there. They did mention in that video that they're going to have DM encounter building rules updated. I feel like they should have that done already if they actually really want people to playtest it and it's not just market research. Yeah, I talked about a lot of the other stuff too from that video throughout this live stream as I was talking about the Unearthed Arcana stuff. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I have. There was probably, out of the 50-minute video, there was probably about you could have summarized it in 5 minutes, I suspect. I'm just not the one that's going to give that summary right now because I don't remember half of what they talked about. I just made notes of the pertinent stuff. Do you think it's possible that Wizards of the Coast is waiting to update monsters until they know what they want to do for player stuff? That way they can give them an appropriate power level? I mean, that's a possibility, sure. That's completely a possibility. Yeah. Update all of the player stuff first, so you know what their power level is, and then you update the monsters, and then you provide the encounter building rules. Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. That totally makes sense to me. I think what you also have is there's only so many people that work there, right? Like there's only so many people that work on D&D, and their team is only so big, so there's only so much they can do. Like they're putting out, they continue to put out products for D&D for 5th edition over the next 2 years. So they have to have teams working on that. But at the same time, their teams have to work on 6th edition. And so you've only got so many people with so much time, and there's only so much you can get done. And so you have to split it up and cut it up somehow. And so whether they're doing what you suggested or whether they just picked it this way, I don't know. I would like to think that as professional game developers, there is a rhyme and a reason to the methodology that they're choosing, as far as like what we're going to update first and then what we're going to pick on next. And it does make sense to me to update the player options first, the classes and species and stuff and backgrounds, so that then you can get a gauge of how powerful things are. And then you can create monsters, and then you can create the new challenge rating system and how to balance things. So that approach does make sense to me. So I would like to think that that's probably what they're doing, which means it's going to be a year or plus until we get a challenge rating system and monsters that we can use in our playtests. Do you think they will actually call it 6th edition? They will. Just hold on a second. So, when 5th edition originally came out, it was not called 5th edition. It was called D&D Next. They refused to call it 5th edition. They did not call it 5th edition. It was called D&D Next. And then, I don't know, at some point after it was released, it might have been 6 months or something. At some point, they started calling it 5th edition. They just admitted it and called it what it was. And now that they had an entire video, well, it was at least a segment of a video, where they were very clear about there no longer being editions. We have reached the apex of D&D. We are beyond editions. Editions are over. This is the next evolution of D&D. And they had like dramatic music behind it and stuff, you know. It was very well produced. I'll give them that. But they had this whole thing about it not being a new edition. It's next evolution. It's one D&D. It's the D&D to end all D&Ds and all this kind of stuff. So, it's not really true. And this is what I don't like. And I've talked about this before. It's disingenuous and it really irks me when companies lie to me. But it's definitely probably like a new edition. And when it comes out, it's going to be radically different. Well, it's going to be materially different. There are going to be some big changes and differences to it. And they may call it a 6th edition. They might call it a 5.5, or they might stick to their guns for 2 years. Everybody else is going to call it 6th edition. Everybody else will call it 6th edition. I'm calling it that. Because, yeah. When you create new core rulebooks, it's a new edition. And the other thing is too, is even if the rules are compatible, like this 5th edition and the 6th edition and the rule sets work together, like even if I can take a cleric from 5th edition and it works in the 6th edition rule set, even if it's backwards compatible and totally works, and I can just use that cleric in the new edition, who's gonna want to? Who's gonna want to use that old cleric when the new cleric is so much better? And here's the thing, even if something from the books that are coming out right now will work in the new edition, if something from Fizzbands will work in the new edition, if something from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything will work in the new edition, who's gonna want to use it? When one D&D's content is going to be so much more powerful, who in their right mind is going to want to use old content? It's going to be prohibitively expensive to use old content because you're going to be so far behind the power curve. You're going to like try to use your old cleric or something and be like, wow, this sucks, man. The new cleric gets all this stuff. Well, of course I want to be the new cleric. And so even if it's backwards compatible, there's going to be such a predisposition, a temptation, a push to use the new material that at that point it's like, can you really call it the same edition? Like if the stuff from 5th edition is so much less powerful than the 6th edition, like can you really call it the same edition? Even if the rules still work together, like you can make an argument that you're outclassed. Like the power is so much of a difference, they don't work together. Even if the rules are technically compatible, they don't work. You can't take a cleric from 5th edition and put it in 6th edition because the power level is so different. You know, it doesn't work. You get your butt handed to you and you can't pull your weight. And the rest of your players are all like, dude, just run a new cleric. What do you use that old one for? The new one's better, right? So there's a point there where you have to wonder if you can really keep calling it the same edition, right? And you have to wonder too, like what's the purpose of buying books right now? If the books you buy aren't gonna work very well when the new edition comes out. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the live stream, but like if I were planning on playing 1 edition, and I'm not, my home game is literally transitioning to Pathfinder 2.0, and for my other games that I run for people, I'm gonna keep running 5th edition. That's my current plan. So, but if I were going to transition to 1 D&D, I would stop buying D&D books like right now, because it would be a bad use of my money to buy a book that's going to be outdated in like 2 years and behind the power curve, so to speak. So that's not what Wizards wants you to do, though. They don't want you to stop buying books because they need the money. All right, more questions here. Some of the cleric spells we saw for the life domain have changed levels. The cleric spells do? Which spells would you like to see move up or down the spell book? Oh, Spirit Guardians should definitely be a higher level spell. What level is Spirit Guardians right now? Spirit Guardians, that's a 3rd level spell probably, right? Spirit Guardians should go up a level for sure. For sure. Because when you have a spell that is so good that everybody casts it all the time, you know that it's too powerful and that it should go somewhere. Does anybody know offhand? I'm going to keep flipping through until I find Spirit Guardians. I think it's 3rd level. I think it is. Might be 2nd level. Jeez, good. That's 3rd level. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Spirit Guardians should be probably a 4th level spell, in my opinion. Because it's pretty darn powerful, man. Crazy powerful. Lasts 10 minutes, too. So Spirit Guardians should definitely go up to 4th level. Spiritual Weapon is pretty powerful, too. But if they change it to Concentration, I think that fixes it. I think the Raise Dead spells and Revivify spells, I would like to see those change. Like, Revivify is what level spell is Revivify? I think that's a 3rd level spell. So you can start raising people from the dead at 5th level. You used to not be able to raise people from the dead till later levels, which I think made more sense. So those, but no, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. Never. They will never do that. I don't know. Those are the ones that I think come to the top of my mind. And they come to the top of my mind because they just constantly get used and they're so powerful. You know, when you have spells that everybody goes to and they always use them over and over and over and over again, there's a reason why. Because they're exceptionally good. So that means either the spell should be changed or it should be made available at higher levels or something. And the converse is true too. When you have a spell like Resistance, for instance, that nobody ever uses, or True Strike, which is probably the worst spell in the game, when you have a spell that nobody uses, it's for a reason, because they're really, really bad, which means you should either change the spell and make it better so it's more attractive, or you should, if it's, for instance, a 3rd level spell, maybe change it to a 2nd level spell so that it gets more power because it goes down in levels, you know? So the converse is also true. So I think there are lots of spells that never get used because they suck, and there are other spells that always get used because they're crazy powerful. So if you care about balance, because, you know, there's 2 schools of thought here, right? Like, the one school of thought is it's D&D, who cares about balance? You know, it's not supposed to be balanced. Don't worry about that. And then there's the other school of thought that says, well, you know, we should have some semblance of balance, you know? Your point of view and how you feel about that really just depends on which school you sit in. I sit in the school of I want more balance, and I'm going to tell you why. As a dungeon master, I don't always run balanced games. My players frequently find very challenging encounters. But the reason that I sit in the balanced group is because I'm thinking about new dungeon masters. I'm thinking about dungeon masters who haven't been playing for a while, who don't have the experience and expertise to be able to adjust things and build encounters and stuff like that. And I'm speaking for dungeon masters who might be frustrated when they can't balance things and things are either too hard or too easy, and they just get frustrated with that. And so that's why I'm more into the camp of let's have things be more balanced, because it makes it easier for new dungeon masters who haven't been playing for 20 years, you know? So I'm an advocate for that reason, not because I necessarily run super balanced games. You said you like the new hide action DC, but a DC 15 means that a rogue or bard will be able to hide 100% of the time from literally every creature in the game. Is that too much of a power boost to justify the set 15? Well, I mean, right now, what's the DC for hiding? The DC for hiding is literally the passive perception of a monster. I would argue that right now, a rogue can hide 100% of the time, because the passive perception for most monsters is a 10, 11, or a 12. Once some monsters have it higher than that, but most monsters, their passive perception is 10, 11, or 12. And so right now, a rogue who uses a stealth check has to beat a DC of a 12 at highest, which is easy for a rogue, unless they really screw their roll up. So I would say that right now, rogues can hide 100% of the time. So a DC 15 is actually making it higher. It's making it more difficult for a rogue to hide. And so, unless I'm missing the purpose of the question here, it's not actually a power boost. It actually makes it harder to hide for them. technically. Christmas themed one-shot ideas. I don't really do themed adventures like that. I've never done a holiday adventure, I don't think, ever. How would you change the True Strike spell and make it worth something again? Okay, well let's go take a look at True Strike. My dog just stepped in her dish, her water dish, got her foot all wet. All right, got True Strike. All right, True Strike, cantrip, one action. It's concentration, it takes one round. It lasts one round. You point a finger at a target in range. Your magic grants you a brief insight into the target's defenses. On your next turn, you gain advantage on your first attack roll against the target, provided that this spell hasn't ended. How would I change that? Gosh, what if you make it a bonus action? If you make it a bonus action, but it still requires concentration, maybe that would make it better. Would you always use it? If it were a bonus action, would you always use it? Not necessarily, because it requires concentration. And in many fights, wizards and other people are concentrating on other things. So you wouldn't always use that, because you can't always get advantage on something, right? But you have to make it not suck too. So maybe a bonus action would fix it. The thing is you'd have to tweak it and then playtest it, like literally, like actually playtest it and see how it worked. But that might be a place to start, and then you playtest it and you see how it works, and then you have a conversation with your playtesters and you see what makes sense and how you might change it. I think my dog is over there sniffing the catnip from the cats. All right. Which of your lovely cats would you want to DM for you? Squeaky. I would have Squeaky dungeon master for me for sure. If you are playing Pathfinder 2e in your home game, any plans to bring Pathfinder stuff to GM Lair books, the DM Lair books and magazines? Asking as a Pathfinder DM or GM with little incentive to switch to one D&D. Right now, no. Here's the thing. There's in the business world, there's a concept of line extension, where you have a product, you have a thing that you do, and then you extend your lines. You know, so for instance, we have Lair magazine right now that we publish for 5th edition. An example of a line extension would be, as a business, we now start publishing it for Pathfinder, and we start publishing it for GURPS, and then that's another line extension, and then we start publishing it for Savage World, and we just keep picking new systems to publish our content for, and we would keep extending our lines. Here's what happens most of the time in the business world when you have a line extension like that. It initially gathers you some steam, but in the long run, it usually bites you in the butt. And here's an example of why. So if we were to start publishing, right now we do Lair magazine for 5th edition. If we were to start publishing it for Pathfinder, here's what would happen. My entire team would have to do lots more work. So we would commission writers to write the stuff for Lair magazine, and then somebody would have to convert it to Pathfinder, right? All the magic items, all of the adventures, all the monsters, everything would have to get converted over to Pathfinder. So I would probably make sure I know what my dog's doing. That could be close to a half-time job for somebody to convert everything over to Pathfinder, rewrite everything to have it go into Pathfinder. So at that point, I'm paying somebody, a half-time job, basically, not full-time, probably a half-time job to convert everything over. So there's an added cost right there where I have to do that. Now, the next thing that I have to do is I also have to change my marketing. My marketing now has to reach out to Pathfinder people. Instead of just marketing everything to D&D 5th edition, I have to change my marketing strategy. So what's my marketing strategy to reach the Pathfinder segment so that they'll start buying
Lair magazine Pathfinder version. Well, how would I do that? Well, my D&D videos, I could also talk about my Pathfinder stuff. Well, maybe I could do that. When I do my Lair magazine plugs, I could say that we have both Pathfinder and 5th edition. Maybe I could do that. But do Pathfinder people watch my videos? Maybe, maybe not. I'd have to look into that. I might have to start making more videos that are specifically targeted to Pathfinder people so that they would watch them. Because in my business world, when I say marketing, like my marketing is like my YouTube channel, my webpage. That's how I do marketing. That's how I get attention and let people know about the products that my team and I create. And so if I want to sell Pathfinder stuff, I have to think about how am I going to get that attention? How am I going to do my marketing? I might have to make videos specifically for Pathfinder so that people will watch it and then learn about the products we create for Pathfinder, which means that I'm now I'm either doing fewer videos for D&D 5th edition or just D&D in general, and I'm doing more videos for Pathfinder. So that means fewer people are seeing my D&D videos, which means fewer people are hearing about Lair magazine for 5th edition, but more people are hearing about it for Pathfinder 2nd edition. So now I could potentially be losing people for the 5th edition product of Lair magazine, but I'm trying to gain people for Pathfinder. So I could be losing and then gaining because I'm splitting my marketing efforts. I'm only one person, right? There's only so much I can do. Or I could start doing twice as many videos. Like now I start up a new channel, and I'm doing videos for D&D and I'm doing videos for Pathfinder. So I have to do twice as much work. So you see, when you extend your lines, it creates more work, right? It creates a lot more effort you have to do. Now, if you have the manpower, and I could bring on extra people to convert everything to Pathfinder and stuff, and I do all this, and somehow I multiply myself so I can do more videos and do more marketing or something. Like if I could do that, right, then maybe extending your line could be successful. Maybe it could, right? But what if I don't extend my line? What if I'm satisfied with what I have right now? What if I say, hey, D&D 5th edition is the most popular game system right now. Like it is the most popular system with the most people playing it. So what does that mean? It means if I produce content for that, I have the greatest probability of customers, of people using what we produce, right? And so that's a really good place to spend our marketing, a really good place to have our writers writing for it. It's a really good line to be developing products for. Whereas Pathfinder 2nd edition, not as many people play it, right? So what's my potential customer base? Yeah. So these are all considerations and things you have to think about when you're considering extending your line, and creating more product, And so I'm giving you a really in-depth answer to your question, right? It's not as easy as just creating something for another system. There's a whole lot more that goes into considering that than just making something, because we don't produce garbage, right? Like we're not just flipping out stupid little crappy PDFs, that take like 2 seconds to write for these game systems. Like there's a lot of effort and steps, and this is really well produced content that we create, and it's not easy, and so there's a whole lot that goes into there to be able to like start creating Pathfinder 2nd edition stuff. So the long and short of it is there are no plans whatsoever to do that. Despite the fact that I like Pathfinder 2nd edition and I'm transitioning my home game to it, because there's a difference between, just honestly, there's a difference between running a business that your livelihood depends upon and other people's livelihood depends upon, and playing a game that you enjoy. Like there's a point where you have to make a decision. Am I going to just pursue playing the game that I enjoy and don't worry about the business and don't worry about making money and paying the people that work for me? Like I have to think about those things. It's a legitimate thing to think about. So there's an honest answer for you. Oh, we'll consider it. Most people would just say, "Well, that's a really good idea. Thank you," and we'll think about it. That's what most people would say. But life isn't that easy. When 1D&D is released, will you still be making 5th edition content transferred to 1D&D or another system, such as Pathfinder? Related question. Most of my videos right now do tend to be system agnostic. A lot of the videos I make aren't specifically for 5th edition. In fact, you could say that most of my videos aren't even for D&D. A lot of these concepts dealing with problem players, you know, how to do your game master notes, how to prepare for a session. A lot of these things that I talk about in my videos aren't even specific to D&D. Now, we market it toward D&D, right? Because that's the way you're going to get eyeballs, right, and stuff. So it's marketed that way. But I think my dog needs to go to the bathroom. Wow, she's over there pacing. I'm gonna have a mess to clean up. But I don't right now. There's no plans to change anything. But that's always going to be something that we will have to consider. Like you can't make a declaration right now about we're not changing our content. You don't know. Like you don't know. You have to see how things go, right? Like if one D&D comes, let's lay out a scenario. One D&D arrives. Everyone is playing one, like literally, like the Exodus is amazing and everybody stops playing 5th edition. Like it's an amazing Exodus to 1 D&D. Well, at that point you say, well, guess what, team? We're going to start creating content for 1 D&D, or we're going to start making videos for it, right? Because that's where the customer base went. Because like I said, running a business, right? I have to pay my wife, our house, everything, right? I have people that work for me. I have to pay them too, right? So you have to think about that stuff. If all of your customers go to 1 D&D, maybe that's where you go. But if there's a huge segment of people, a massive amount of people who are like, I'm not going there, there's no way. And 5th edition remains vibrant and stuff, well, then you keep creating content for it, right? So you make those decisions based upon what happens, you know? You can't declare those things in advance. It depends. The answer is it depends. Squirty Pie is just lying there. Look at this cat. Oh, let's go to the cat cam. There we go. Do you think guidance and resistance should be limited like guidance was in the last playtest? Players could only be affected by guidance once a long rest. They removed it in this. Yeah, they removed it because nobody liked it. They nerfed it and nobody liked it. So I don't know. I hate guidance. Honestly, guidance is horrible. I hate guidance. Everybody in my games gets advantage on everything because out of combat, because the cleric is always casting guidance. Here, have a guidance. Here, have a guidance. Here, have a guidance. So like everybody roll. I'm sorry. Guidance doesn't give you advantage. Guidance gives you a 1d4, but everybody gets a 1d4, and everybody also gets advantage on everything because everybody's always helping each other. Oh, you're going to investigate that room? Let me help you. Oh, you want to look at that? Let me help you. And so everybody ends up getting advantage, and everybody ends up getting guidance. It gets on my nerves. It's one of those things that's been annoying me for a while now that I'm at the point where I'm probably going to make a house rule because it's out of control. Everybody gets advantage and guidance on everything. Have you taken a look at the Dragonlance encounters, which seem to be much more appropriate challenge for all the power creep? No, I don't own the Dragonlance book. I did see the alt cover for Dragonlance though, and it looked really cool. I might buy the Dragonlance book only for the alt cover. I don't know if I would ever use it or read it because I have so much work going on. But I might buy it for the alt cover. Have you ever thought about making your own tabletop role-playing game designed to be good for new dungeon masters? Thought about it? Yes. Seriously considered it? No. As a fan of 2nd edition multi-class and dual class rules, I hate the multi-class rules as they are. I hate the multi-class rules as they are too. I hate them. I despise them. What are your thoughts on changing multi-class rules so you could get to max level? So the way Pathfinder 2nd edition does multi-classing, I think is amazing. Like you don't take another class, you get a feat that allows you to take feats from other classes. And I think that solution is wonderful. I love it. And that's a great way to go. But yeah, I agree. The multi-classing as it is in 5th edition is just ridiculous. I hate it. It's so, it irks me, you know. You have the player that's taking 1 level of cleric to get heavy armor. And that's the only, it's a wizard with like 1 level of cleric only for the heavy armor. That's it. Just splash that. Or you have like the paladin, sorcerer, warlock splash, you know, and everybody's just splashing these things to get this low hanging fruit. Warlock is pretty much useless, by the way. Like I'm playing a warlock right now And I usually play a straight class all the way up. I don't like multi-classing. But I'm playing a warlock right now, and I'm looking at the warlock, and I'm just like, I don't know why I would go beyond 3rd or 4th level. Like, I get nothing, you know? And so I think I'm sticking to like 4th level or 5th level for certain reasons. And then I'm going to sorcerer because it's like, there's no reason to go further than that. It's crazy. It's so bad. So you definitely have to multi-class, or you have to multi-class with the warlock. I generally hate the multi-class rules. Do you paint miniatures? I absolutely do. And if so, can we look at your work? I have miniature painting videos on my other channel, the DM Lair streams, where you can see some of the minis I painted. I don't have any right here. I'm not gonna go grab any right now. I would say that I'm mediocre at painting minis. I'm not an amateur, but I am by no means an expert. Like, I see some of the, like, I watch some of the YouTube mini painting channels, and these guys are amazing. I am nowhere near their level of expertise by any stretch. I don't suck. Like, I can paint minis well enough so they look good at the game table, and they look better than most of the minis my other players and stuff paint, but I would not say that they are like super professional. I would say they just don't suck. Okay, we're gonna do the giveaway now. Oh, we're gonna do the giveaway. I haven't been telling people a whole lot about the giveaway, so I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to go into the giveaway if you didn't enter it, because I haven't talked about it like the whole stream. So please take a couple minutes to go to the giveaway and enter your information into the giveaway. While you are doing that, I'm gonna play a short video from the Barbarian.
Hi there, you probably already know what I'm going to say, but if you don't, that's okay. I literally get paid to do this stuff, so I don't mind repeating myself. Anyway, if you're a busy person and you would like to spend less time prepping for your D&D games, you should really become a DM Lair patron and get a new issue of Lair magazine every month. It contains 5th edition and resources designed by our team of mad scientists to brainwash your players into thinking you're the very best dungeon master in the entire world. So just go on ahead and click that big shiny link below and become a DM Lair patron today. Don't worry, your players will never even know that you're cheating.
Okay, cool. David says, these new midstream ads are pretty funny. I was trying to make those Barbarian sleazy plugs as stupid as I could. Like, my whole goal was like, make them stupid. Okay, let's do the giveaway. Find it. And I gotta enter it. I gotta draw the winner. How do I draw the winner? Okay, I found it. All right, drawing the winners of the giveaway. Whee! Here we go. Here we go. Ooh. Okay. The winner is I Maybe One. That's the username. I Maybe One. So you won. I Maybe One, and I will send you an email to get you information about the book and stuff like that. So, yeah, cool. Congratulations. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it. That's all she wrote. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be back next week, doing just normal Q&A, unless they release another Unearthed Arcana. So, have a wonderful evening, everybody. Cool hanging out. I'm gonna go to bed now. All right. Bye.